Hey there, curious minds. Tonight, we're diving deep into the kinds of stories that hum beneath your skin and rattle around your brain long after the lights go out. Picture it, moonlight slicking across marble columns that reach up and up, like the gods are trying to poke holes in the sky. You float above the realm of Olympus, the air thinner here, perfumed faintly with burnt offerings and ancient ambition. Below, the gods move in slow, deliberate swirls, robes whispering across polished stone, eyes aglow with centuries of schemes, and somewhere in the distance, a peacock cries out with a tone that sounds suspiciously judgy. There's a restlessness in the wind tonight. A low murmur travels between clouds and ears. Zeus, the king of gods, has been listening. And not to prayers this time. Someone whispered something about a prophecy, and now, well, things are about to get uncomfortably mortal. Because let's be honest, anytime a god starts making decisions based on a voice in the shadows, someone down on Earth is about to get monumentally inconvenienced, or worse. Quick favor, before you dive into full-on relaxation mode, consider liking and subscribing. It helps more than you know, and I genuinely appreciate it if you do. If not, no worries, I'm just glad you're here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing where in the world we're falling asleep together. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Let's take a moment to leave the noise of the day behind. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So now, you're hanging in the clouds with Zeus, who's currently lounging on a throne made of clouds and probably ego. Lightning crackles across the floor like spilled nerves, and he's wearing that look again. The one that means he's thinking too hard for someone who usually solves problems with storms and questionable transformations. This time, though, it isn't a war or a rival or even his endlessly jealous wife, Hera, that's got him brooding. It's something smaller. A single thread tugging at the corners of fate. A human problem, which are often his favorite kind to meddle in, or ruin. Or, in this case, maybe both. Word around Olympus is that something important has been seen. Not in the stars or in the guts of a goat or even in some poor doomed bird's flight pattern. No, this one came from the oracle at Delphi herself. And when she speaks, even gods tilt their heads like nervous schoolchildren. Her breath smells like ash and honey, her eyes fogged with things mortals should never see, but she spoke clearly this time. She said that a child, not yet born, would change the course of many lives. A child of Zeus, yes, but also the child of someone he hadn't even met yet. Historians still argue whether Zeus truly believed in the power of oracles, or if he just liked pretending he did when it gave him an excuse to stir things up on Earth. Either way, the prophecy clings to his mind like morning mist. A son will be born under strange circumstances, and he will not only rise to greatness, he will undo an ancient fear. Not Zeus's fear, of course. He doesn't really do fear, but there's another man who does, and that's where this story really starts. Far below Olympus, in a place called Argos, King Acrisius tosses and turns in a bed too ornate to be comfortable. He dreams of storms and falling towers, of his name written on crumbling stone. And when he wakes, he's already sweating. Not because of a fever, but because of something far worse. A prophecy delivered directly to him. One that says he will die not by sword or sickness, but by the hand of his own grandson. Now, let's pause for a second, because honestly, you'd think kings would learn by now. Every time they try to stop a prophecy, they end up tap dancing straight into it like toddlers in a puddle. But no, Acrisius, like so many before him, thinks he can outsmart the fates. He thinks he can outplan destiny itself. So what does he do? He locks up his daughter. Of course he does. That's what any rational man would do upon hearing he'll be killed by a baby that doesn't even exist yet, right? No need to address your own mortality or legacy. Just imprison your only child. Great move. But don't worry, we'll get there. For now, the winds around Olympus grow heavier, charged with the static buzz of plans unfolding. Zeus, now very much intrigued, walks the sky with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. He's not just thinking about the prophecy anymore. He's thinking about Danae, a girl whose name he hasn't even heard yet. A girl who, at this very moment, sits staring at a wall in her golden tower, unaware that the clouds above her are already conspiring. And this is where the history part kicks in. Because yes, there really was a city called Argos. And yes, there really was a belief in royal bloodlines that could be blessed or cursed by the gods. Kings often consulted oracles before making decisions, and fear of being overthrown by one's own kin was a constant theme in ancient monarchies. Oedipus wasn't the only guy with parental drama, after all. But here's your fringe tidbit. Some scholars speculate that the myth of Zeus turning into a golden shower to reach Danae may actually be a symbolic description of sunlight entering a subterranean chamber. That maybe this part of the story, glitzy as it sounds, was once a poetic way of describing fertility rites connected to solar deities. Historians still argue whether the story of the golden rain was meant literally or metaphorically, but we're going literal tonight because it's way more fun that way. Back in Olympus, Zeus leans forward, resting his chin on his fist, watching the earth spin slowly beneath him like a toy globe. You can almost hear his thoughts bubbling just beneath the thunder. Who is she? Where is she? And more importantly, how can I show up in a way that won't alert Hera immediately? Because when you're the king of gods and your marriage is a diplomatic disaster, stealth becomes second nature. And there it is, that familiar tension in the air. That twitch in the wind that means something's about to change. Somewhere down there, Danae breathes deeply in her sleep, unaware that her entire future is floating above her, glowing faintly and humming like lightning bottled in gold. You stand now beneath marble skies, in the cool shadow of Argos Palace, where fear blooms like mold between the gold-trimmed tiles. King Acrisius, ruler of this city shaped by sun and superstition, paces hard enough to leave ruts in the stone, gripping his robe as though it might suddenly explain everything. His face, carved with age and pride, tightens with every whispered word of doom echoing in his mind. Because he didn't just hear a rumor. He didn't just catch wind of some street-corner diviner predicting vague misfortunes. No, Acrisius went to the oracle of Delphi herself, and she served him a truth so chilling it rooted into his spine like frost. The prophecy came soft and smoky: you will die by the hand of your daughter's son. That's it, no time frame, no details, no loopholes, just that clean, ancient certainty, the kind that makes kings turn to stone inside. And here's the real kicker: Acrisius only has one child, a daughter named Danae. No sons to carry his line, no heirs to sway alliances or inherit crowns. Just her, his gleaming, golden daughter, his living link to the future, and now, apparently, his accidental assassin-in-waiting. Of course, most kings faced with this situation would maybe try to change their fate by changing their behavior. Maybe mend fences, love a little deeper, prepare better for the unknown, but not Acrisius. No, he decides to go full overreaction, dialed up to 11. He figures if Danae never has a child, then there's no grandson to do any slaying, right? Simple math, terrible parenting. So what does he do? Well, historians still argue whether this part actually stems from earlier fertility rituals or just good old-fashioned male panic. But one thing's consistent: he decides to hide her away. Forever. In a locked chamber built from bronze and stone, buried beneath the earth like a treasure no one is meant to find. She's not sent to a convent, not cloistered among priestesses. No, he builds a whole subterranean prison, smooth and windowless, and places her inside, like she's a dangerous artifact, rather than his own flesh and blood. You walk alongside her now as the doors shut. She doesn't scream, she doesn't protest. Maybe because she knows it won't change anything, or maybe because the quiet already feels more familiar than the sun ever did. The chamber is more than a cell, it's a sentence. Light filters in through slits barely wider than your fingers. No visitors, no suitors, no warmth but what little can be drawn from candles and dreams. And she dreams often, Danae, of open skies, of strange laughter, of birds too bright to be real. Sometimes when she touches the walls, she imagines their breathing. Meanwhile, Acrisius feels smug about his cleverness. He thinks he's pulled a fast one on fate, that he's boxed out the gods and tucked the future somewhere dark and manageable. But again, have you met the gods? This is Olympus we're talking about. They eat clever mortals for breakfast. And Zeus lives for loopholes. Now here's your dose of ancient realness. It wasn't uncommon in old Greek city-states for royalty to isolate daughters if their marriage or fertility threatened existing power structures. It sounds dramatic now, but back then, wombs were political weapons, and controlling them was a state strategy. Kings like Acrisius weren't anomalies, they were textbook. And the idea of divine punishment sneaking in through the very locks meant to keep it out. That's mythology doing its favorite trick, turning irony into inevitability. But there's more. A little-known twist hiding in the margins of this myth suggests Acrisius may have tried more than one method to avoid the prophecy. Some old fragments claim he initially tried to have Danae killed, but was warned against it by priests or signs in the sky. Others say he consulted rival oracles, hoping one might contradict the first. None did. Every path led back to that same thread. The grandson, the boy who would end him. And so, down in the earth, Danae lies suspended in time. She reads the same scrolls over and over, paints little patterns in the dust, hums lullabies to herself, not because she remembers the words, but because silence presses too hard otherwise. She's not broken, though don't imagine her as fragile. If anything, she's hardened in solitude, like gold hammered thin until it sings. And somewhere deep in the ether, that subtle song catches Zeus's ear. Now, this is where the story veers into the wildly theatrical, because Zeus could appear in 1,000 forms. A bull, a swan, a man with terrible boundaries. But this time, for Danae, he chooses something completely different. Not animal, not storm, something elegant, something impossible. A shimmering rain of gold. You might think that's just poetic exaggeration, but hold on. Some researchers believe this part of the myth might be rooted in symbolic language, describing rays of sunlight penetrating a chamber, or a symbolic depiction of divine conception through radiant energy. A few fringe theorists even propose this myth encodes astronomical alignments. Light falling into a temple at a specific solstice. Historians still argue whether the golden shower was meant to imply spiritual enlightenment or fertility in a literal sense. But here, in this tale, we're taking it at shimmering, face-value magic. And Zeus, oh, he descends like glitter soaked in gravity. No voice, no footsteps, no warning. Just warmth on Danae's cheek as she lies half asleep, thinking about stars she hasn't seen in years. The air thickens, shimmers, then begins to sparkle, and before she knows it, her skin is glowing, her breath catching like she's just inhaled summer itself. She doesn't scream, she doesn't run, she simply watches as gold slides down from the ceiling cracks, curling through the air like smoke from a dream. And in that moment, divinity touches her, not with force, not with fury, but with softness she didn't know gods possessed. You watch, suspended between disbelief and wonder, as the prophecy begins to thread itself into the world again, despite every lock, every wall, every desperate plan. Acrisius, miles above, sleeps soundly for now, unaware that fate has just slipped through his fingers in the form of gold dust and sighs. And Danae, she lies still, hands across her belly as if instinct already knows what has just begun inside her. A heartbeat forming from starlight, a child not just of her body but of prophecy itself. A son who will carry her story out of the earth and into legend. But not just yet. Time passes in the bronze chamber like water in a still pond, No ripples, no tides, just the slow, silent thickening of everything. Danae counts the days in candle wax and wall scratches, but after a while, even those melt together into one long blur. Something shifts inside her, though, not metaphorically, but physically, undeniably. Her body changes. Her appetite twists into something new and bottomless, and her dreams become heavier, filled with oceans, serpents, crowns she's never worn. Until finally, one morning, she presses her hand to her stomach and doesn't feel alone anymore. You sit with her, quiet as the weight of what's happened settles into her bones. She's pregnant. In a room no man has ever entered. From a rain of gold that somehow left her not just touched but transformed. She doesn't tell anyone, not that there's anyone to tell, but she begins speaking softly to the walls anyway. As if they're listening. As if they might pass her words along to someone, somewhere, who could understand. Now, here's where things start to get inconvenient for Acrisius, because it's not easy to hide a pregnancy forever, even when the woman is hidden too. Danae grows fuller, stronger, more radiant with each passing week. She walks with her hands cradling her belly, whispering lullabies that sound like wind chimes in a storm. And then one night, her cries pierce through the stillness. Labor comes hard and fast. No midwives, no help, no soft linens or steaming water. Just stone and breath and a strength she never knew she had. And then you hear it. A baby's cry, sharp and sudden like a star being born too close to earth. Danae holds him, blinking away sweat and tears and disbelief. He is small but not fragile, eyes wide like he's already reading the room, and when she speaks his name, Perseus, it echoes in the stone chamber like prophecy fulfilled. Yes, that Perseus, but don't get ahead of yourself. He's just a newborn right now. Soft skin, warm fists, all instinct and potential. Still, the moment he arrives, the air changes. The silence breaks, and above ground the servants notice. The guards hear something strange. Eventually, word reaches Acrisius. Imagine being the king who built an underground fortress just to trap fate, and then finding out that fate not only slipped through but also used the place as a delivery room. He's furious, shocked, and terrified all over again. And honestly, who could blame him? You spend all that money on bronze walls and divine insulation, and what do you get? A grandson screaming from a corner of your most secure chamber. Here's a strange little footnote. Some fringe interpretations of this myth suggest that Danae may not have been entirely alone during her pregnancy, that perhaps her nursemaid or a loyal servant sneaked food and comfort to her in secret. There's even one obscure source that hints at dreams guiding her through childbirth, as though Hera herself offered a strange kind of pity behind Zeus's back. Historians still argue whether Danae's isolation was truly complete, or if fate always sends help through unexpected cracks. Regardless, Acrisius now has a much bigger problem than a theoretical grandchild. He's got an actual one. A baby with divine blood and a mother who, despite everything, looks stronger than ever. He considers the unthinkable. Infanticide wasn't exactly taboo in ancient times, especially for rulers trying to snuff out a threat. But something conscience, fear, or maybe the awareness that this kid might literally zap him from a cradle stops him from spilling blood directly. Instead, he hatches a different kind of cruelty, a loophole wrapped in cowardice. One night, under a sky full of judgmental stars, he orders a wooden chest to be built, large enough for a woman and her child. Lined not with comfort but with silence and seawater promises. And before dawn, Danae and baby Perseus are sealed inside it and carried to the shore. The guards try not to meet her eyes as they place the box on the tide. She doesn't cry. She holds her son close, humming that same lullaby from the chamber as if it might keep the sea gentle. The tide rolls forward, slow and foam-flecked, and the box begins to drift. No one says goodbye. Acrisius doesn't even watch. Now you might be tempted to shout at someone here. She just gave birth. There's a baby, in a box. And yes, that's exactly the level of ancient drama we're working with. But also remember, this wasn't an unheard-of punishment. Stories from across ancient cultures speak of rulers setting enemies adrift, hoping the sea will finish what they couldn't. It's a kind of plausible deniability with saltwater teeth. "Oh no, I didn't kill them," they'd say. "The sea took them." Like Poseidon was just running a magical hitman service. But that's not what happens here. Because the sea doesn't swallow them. It cradles them, tosses the box like a toy but never cracks it. Danae wraps herself around Perseus like a second womb, whispering over and over, "Hold on. Just hold on." And for days, that's all they do. Float. Survive. Wait. Here's where things get extra poetic. Some legends say that dolphins followed the box, singing low songs to keep the baby calm. Others claim sea nymphs guided the currents away from storms. One fringe theory even suggests the box was blessed by Zeus, enchanted to float no matter how rough the waters got. Historians still argue whether this part is symbolic of rebirth through trial, or just another example of divine favoritism turning potential tragedy into mythic glory. Eventually, the chest bumps against something solid. A shore, lined with rocks and seaweed, and the beginnings of a new life. A fisherman named Dictys finds them. He sees the chest, hears the soft cry inside, and instead of walking away like any sane person in an ancient myth, he opens it. What he finds isn't just a woman and a child, it's the future, blinking up at him with serious eyes and tangled hair. Dictys isn't rich or royal, just kind, and kind is exactly what they need. He helps Danae up, carries the baby, offers shelter and food and maybe, finally, a little peace. They're on the island of Seriphos now, far from Argos, far from Acrisius, but not far enough to escape the gods' attention or the next chapter of fate. You watch as Danae, exhausted and salt-crusted, lays Perseus down on a straw mat. She kisses his forehead. Her breath trembles but doesn't break, and in the stillness of this humble home you feel it. That hush that comes right after a storm and right before another. The sea softens behind you now, replaced by gull cries and the smell of fish drying on wooden racks beneath the sun. You step onto Seriphos with bare feet and squint into the light. Nothing grand here, no marble halls or fluttering banners, just a sleepy island where people greet each other with nods instead of fear. It's the kind of place where secrets fade under the crash of waves, and every meal tastes like salt and luck. Danae and Perseus start over in a quiet house nestled beside the olive groves, with Dictys, gentle, weathered Dictys, offering more than just shelter. He becomes something like family, stepping in without fanfare to hold the baby, repair the roof, or bring home fish when coins are low. He never asks how a royal woman and divine baby floated into his life. Maybe because he already knows better than to pry into the gods' weird hobbies. You watch Perseus grow in this simple life. He learns to walk on sand, to balance on the rocking boats in the harbor, to laugh at Dictys' terrible jokes and sneak olives from market baskets. His hair is a little too shiny, his eyes too clear, like starlight snuck into them when no one was looking. Danae watches him constantly, sometimes with wonder, sometimes with fear, because she knows. Peace is borrowed, not earned, and nothing with Zeus's fingerprints on it stays simple forever. Now, if you peek at a few historical cross-references, Seriphos was a real island in the Cyclades, and its name literally means parched or dry in ancient Greek. Not exactly a tourist hotspot by Olympus standards, but rich in mythic moments. Fringe archaeological theories suggest the myths tied to Seriphos may have stemmed from cultic rituals honoring female fertility and sea deities, which might explain why Danae and Perseus landed here of all places. Historians still argue whether the myth setting is symbolic or literal, but for now, it's real enough under your feet. Years pass like waves. Perseus becomes strong, not just in muscle, but in spirit. He helps Dictys haul in nets, stands up to boys twice his size, and once, according to one oddly specific scroll, tames a particularly angry goat with just a stare and half an apple. Danae grows quieter with time, not withdrawn, just watchful, like she's always listening for the footstep that means their luck is finally up. And then he arrives. King Polydex, ruler of Seriphos, a man who could have stayed on his throne and left the fishermen and wanderers alone. But no, of course not, that would be too easy. Polydex is charming, the way snake oil smells good before you taste it. Smooth robes, gleaming beard, voice like honey poured too thick. He visits the village on inspection, but everyone knows he's sniffing around Danae. The moment he sees her, his eyes narrow, not cruel yet, but interested. He knows that face, that posture, that glow that doesn't quite fade even after years of exile. And he likes what he sees, which is a problem, because Polydex isn't the marry you and bring you flowers type. He's the take you and dare the gods to stop him type. Danae tries to avoid him, keeps to her home, shields Perseus behind her, but Polydex is persistent. Gifts show up at their door. Invitations arrive with gold-stamped seals. At one point, he even offers her a place in the palace for her comfort, which is ancient Greek for I want to own you but in style. She refuses him every time, politely at first then firmly, and that's when things turn sour, because nothing bruises a king's ego quite like being ignored. Polydex decides if he can't charm her, he'll pressure her, and he knows exactly where to start, Perseus. Now, by this time, Perseus is no longer a boy. He's lean, proud, quick-tempered when it comes to his mother, and still unaware of just how divine his blood really is. Polydex pretends to like him, offers him a place at court, a position in the royal guard, but it's all bait. Perseus sees through it and says no, so the king shifts tactics. He calls for great banquet, claims he's going to marry, though he won't say who, and wants every noble and notable young man to bring him a gift. A horse specifically, a fine horse worthy of a king. It's not subtle. Perseus has no money, no land, and certainly no horses. It's a setup. But Perseus, bless him, doesn't back down. Instead, in front of everyone, he boldly declares that if a horse isn't good enough, he'll bring the king anything he wants, even the head of Medusa. Yes, that Medusa. The snake-haired, stone-gaze, nightmare on two legs Medusa. Now pause for a second. This is the part where most people would reconsider their life choices. You've just volunteered to hunt down a cursed gorgon with a face that turns you into granite just for making eye contact. All because you didn't want to look poor at a party. Classic ancient Greek pride move. And Polydex, he just smiles because this is exactly what he wanted. A way to get Perseus out of the picture. A suicide mission disguised as royal flattery. And Perseus, brave or reckless, maybe both, accepts the quest like it's no big deal. Sure, he says, I'll bring you Medusa's head. Like he's popping over to borrow sugar. Historians still argue whether this entire moment is symbolic of youthful hubris or crafted later by storytellers to dramatize Perseus's journey. But it fits too well, doesn't it? The young hero, the impossible task, the scheming villain smiling from his throne. It's all set now. The game board's arranged, the pieces in place. Danae doesn't say much when Perseus tells her he's leaving. She just pulls him close, presses her hand to his cheek, and whispers something only the gods hear. You stand beside her as he walks away. Not in armor, not yet, just in determination. Just a promise. And Polydex watches from the palace steps, already planning his next move. Because whether Perseus comes back or not, the king thinks he's won. And that's the dangerous thing about powerful men who underestimate prophecy. They forget that divine children rarely play by mortal rules. You follow Perseus now as he steps beyond the olive groves of Seriphos and into the wild, open spaces of myth. The salty air of the island fades behind him, replaced by the sharper scent of pine and dust, the dry whisper of wind through ancient stone paths. He carries no sword, no shield, just that stubborn pride and a mission ridiculous enough to make even a seasoned war god raise an eyebrow. Find Medusa, cut off her head, and bring it back to a king who'd love nothing more than to never see him again. Easy, right? But here's the thing about quests in the ancient world. They're never just about the goal, they're tests, initiations, big cosmic escape rooms designed to make you either grow up fast or die trying. And this one, it's got divine interference written all over it. Because somewhere up in the clouds, certain gods are watching, and finally they start to meddle. Enter Hermes. He appears first, but not in full winged helmet and sandals mode. He starts subtle, like most tricksters do. A traveler on the road, a whisper in the trees, a glint in the corner of Perseus's eye that keeps showing up whenever he stops to rest. And then, one night, just as Perseus stares up at the stars wondering whether he's totally lost it, Hermes steps out of the shadows and says, "Nice night for decapitating a Gorgon, huh?" Now, this isn't the dramatic, thunder and spotlight kind of god moment. Hermes talks like a travel blogger with too much caffeine. Fast, breezy, full of jokes, but sharp-eyed underneath. He tells Perseus he's got a few friends who'd like to help if he's willing to listen. And then bam, Athena arrives. She's nothing like Hermes. Calm, measured, eyes like still water that could drown you in strategy. She's the goddess of wisdom and war, which is basically the divine equivalent of a chess grandmaster with a battle axe. She doesn't ask if Perseus wants help. She tells him what he needs to survive, and spoiler alert, it's not good intentions and optimism. She lays out the plan with no sugar-coating. First, he'll need weapons, real ones. Second, he'll need to find the Gree, 3 old sisters who share one eye and know where Medusa is hiding. Third, he'll need items from the gods themselves. Winged sandals for flight, a helm of darkness for stealth, a mirrored shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, a sword sharp enough to cut through divine stone. And here's the weird part. Some versions of the myth claim Perseus was given these items directly by Hermes and Athena. Others say he had to earn them by completing smaller tasks or traveling to hidden temples first. Fringe traditions even insist that one of the items was stolen from a minor god during a dice game gone wrong. Historians still argue whether these gifts were literal divine hand-me-downs or metaphorical tools for enlightenment. Either way, he gets them, eventually. So picture this: Perseus, barely out of adolescence, suddenly armed with gear that would make a Marvel hero jealous. He laces on the winged sandals, feeling the wind lift his feet before he even leaves the ground. He ties on the helm of darkness and becomes, quite literally, invisible to the world. The mirrored shield catches light in odd ways, never quite reflecting his own face. And the sword, it hums when he holds it like it remembers the necks it's meant to sever. But nothing's handed over for free, not even by relatives. Hermes insists on one thing: Perseus must keep moving, no matter what. "Don't pause," he says with a grin. "The moment you do, things will try to talk to you, and trust me, you don't want to hear what's out there." Athena is more direct. "Your mind must be sharper than your blade," she says. "Medusa's strength isn't her face, it's your fear of it. Forget that and you lose." Then she vanishes like a queen ghosting a party she never wanted to attend in the first place. And just like that, Perseus is alone again, but not really. Because now, he carries the weight of expectation, divine approval, of the very real chance that his next step could be into a lair that's more teeth than stone. As he travels deeper into the uncharted wilds, the world begins to warp around him. Forests twist into shapes that seem to watch him pass. Rivers speak in riddles he can almost, but not quite understand. Even the animals grow stranger. A fox with 2 tails. A bird with human eyes. One night, he dreams of Danae crying on a boat made of bones, and wakes with the taste of salt and dread in his mouth. He tries not to think about home, or about Polydex, smug on his throne, probably already composing the fake eulogy he'll deliver when Perseus doesn't return. But the thought gnaws at him, because this isn't just about slaying a monster anymore. It's about proving something, that he's not disposable. That fate doesn't have to be inherited like a bad family curse. Now, here's a wild footnote. Some ancient scripts describe Perseus's journey as taking place beyond the edges of the known Earth, suggesting the myth might have roots in early exploration tales. One scroll even places his path through Hyperborea, a legendary land of eternal spring located somewhere near the Arctic Circle. Yes, the same place some fringe theorists associate with ancient alien contact and lost technology. Historians still argue whether these geographical details were symbolic of inner trials or literal maps lost to time. Eventually, after what feels like weeks of travel, Perseus reaches the cave of the Gree, but we're not there yet. For now, he rests beneath a tree that hums with bees and lightning. The sword lies across his knees. The sandals twitch in the grass like they're dreaming of flight. And you, standing beside him, can feel the world holding its breath, because somewhere ahead lies a monster born of nightmares and tragedy. And all Perseus has to do is find her, face her without looking, and survive long enough to carry her head back in a bag. No pressure. The landscape twists itself thinner as you and Perseus move forward, like the very world is running out of space. Gone are the olive trees and salt winds of Seriphos, gone even are the normal forests and whispering groves. Now it's scrubland stitched with shadow, where the moon barely bothers to rise and the stars look down with a kind of blank disinterest. You've passed into the liminal zones, the in-between places that belong more to story than soil. Perseus moves like someone who knows the danger's close now. His hand hovers near the hilt of the sword even when he sleeps. The winged sandals twitch occasionally, as though they're itching to fly off without him. It's a strange tension, and it thickens with each step toward the Gree. Ah yes, the Gree. 3 sisters older than memory, older even than the Olympians. Some say they were born before the sea had salt. Others claim they clawed their way out of a riddle spoken by the first shadow ever cast. Historians still argue whether the Gree represent an ancient triad of fate goddesses, tied to a much older pre-Greek mythos, or simply serve as a quirky mythological obstacle designed for dramatic pacing. Either way, they are weird. You find them by scent first. The air turns mossy and metallic, like wet stone and teeth left too long in the sun. Then you hear them, a rhythmic rasping, like someone grinding glass inside their throat. When you push through the brambles, there they are, 3 hunched figures in ragged robes the color of grave dust, their skin stretched and gray, their hair falling in tangled ropes around faces that have never seen daylight properly. Because the Gree, in one of mythology's more bizarre design choices, share a single eye. Just one. Passed between them like the world's creepiest party favor. One sister squints into the wind, while another holds out a gnarled hand for her turn, and the third mumbles to herself in a dialect no one's spoken in 2,000 years. It's like watching a nightmarish version of Hot Potato with the added bonus that the potato sees everything. Now, here's the trick. Perseus needs information. Specifically, the location of the Hesperides, who guard the weapons and magical trinkets he still needs to reach Medusa. But the Gree aren't about to give that up freely. They're ancient, yes, but they're also petty and smarter than they look. Fortunately, Perseus didn't inherit just a chin and some muscles from Zeus. He got a bit of the old divine trickery too. He waits, watches, times the rhythm of their pass-the-eye routine. Then, in a blur of movement sharpened by Hermes' advice and Athena's training, he snatches the eyeball right out of the air mid-handoff. The result is chaos. You've never heard such screeching. One sister falls backward into a patch of thorny heather, the second shrieks words in a lost language that might actually curse the moon, and the third flails in the direction she thinks Perseus is, which turns out to be a tree. The eye pulses in his hand, soft, warm, and unsettlingly wet. "Tell me where to find the Hesperides," he says. His voice doesn't waver, not once. "Or I throw this into the sea." And here's the thing. The Gree aren't just blind without their eye, they're powerless. Without it, they can't even sense time. It's their anchor to the world, so they spit and hiss and try to threaten him, but eventually they crack. They always do. No one's more dramatic than immortal crones with a flair for self-pity. One of them mutters the directions through cracked lips. Her breath smells like rust and secrets. North, beyond the ridge where no birds sing. Past the river that forgets your name. Look for the garden with golden light. They'll be waiting. Perseus doesn't thank them, probably wise. He sets the eye gently on a rock and walks away before they can snatch it back and change their minds. You follow close behind, because honestly, that eye is starting to blink at you in a way that feels personal. As you move away from the sisters' lair, the terrain shifts again. Less death and decay now, more anticipation. The grass grows in symmetrical patterns, the trees start to shine slightly at night, and the air carries a scent like oranges and lightning. You're nearing the edge of mortal understanding, the kind of place map makers once labeled with "Here be dragons," because even cartographers had their limits. This is where the Hesperides live, daughters of the night or of Atlas, depending on which ancient poet had the last word. They guard a hidden garden, glittering with gold and heavy with magical fruit. Fringe theories, yes, we're back to those, suggest the Garden of the Hesperides was inspired by Babylonian ziggurats or ancient Persian paradise gardens, with their symmetrical design and impossible lushness. Historians still argue whether the Hesperides represent constellations, nymphs, or just a literary excuse to toss in more shimmering temptation. Perseus doesn't need the fruit. What he's after is the stuff locked behind their tree-lined fortress of beauty, the pouch for Medusa's head, and confirmation of the location of the Gorgon's lair. The Hesperides, unlike the Graeae, don't need to be tricked. They've been waiting for him, which is somehow more unsettling. They greet him with smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. Their voices are like wind chimes laced with warnings. One offers him nectar, which he wisely declines. Another runs her fingers through his hair and murmurs about how short his life is going to be. But they give him what he came for, a magical satchel that can safely hold a Gorgon's head without letting its deadly magic leak out and ruin the day. And finally, they point the way. West, says the eldest Hesperide, to the land beyond breath, you'll find them there. Medusa and her sisters, sleeping beneath the sky that forgets how to dawn. And then she turns to mist, because apparently dramatic exits are just part of the divine toolkit. Perseus stands in the glow of that impossible garden for a moment longer, his hands close around the satchel. The shield gleams beside him, already catching the stars. You can almost hear Athena's voice again, sharper than your blade, echoing in the space between his thoughts. You've made it through the sisters, the cursed and the cryptic, the manipulative and the mercurial. But what lies ahead? That's something else entirely. Because next comes a place where statues weep and shadows hiss, where a single glance can end everything, where Medusa dreams in stone. Sun doesn't rise here. It doesn't set either. It just hangs there pale, silent, exhausted, like a lantern someone forgot to turn off in a room no one's used in years. You and Perseus step carefully now. The grass stopped growing miles ago. The trees have turned to ash-gray silhouettes with branches like frozen lightning. Even the birds, if they existed at all here, have forgotten how to sing. The world has gone brittle, and very, very quiet. You're in the realm of the Gorgons now, a place so drenched in myth it leaks through the soil. People used to live near here once, or try to. Ancient ruins peek through the ground like broken teeth, abandoned columns, half-built temples never finished. You spot a few statues here and there, perfectly posed, detailed right down to the wrinkles around their eyes. And at first, you don't realize what they really are. Then you get closer, and you see the fear frozen into the curves of their mouths, the outstretched arms, the shields raised, just a second too late. These aren't statues. They're people, or they were. Medusa's not even close yet, but her curse stretches far. The air itself feels heavier, like you're breathing through wool. You can hear Perseus's sandals crunch over the gravel, but it sounds muted, like someone's muffling the world with a heavy blanket. Even your thoughts feel slower out here, like they're tiptoeing. The stories never quite agree on how far the land of the Gorgons stretched. Some say it was just a single island, shrouded in mist. Others describe a desert that slithered across the western edge of the world, all sand and bones and silence. Historians still argue whether this strange, cursed region had roots in real places like the Libyan desert, or if it was purely symbolic, representing the mind's final frontier before madness or transformation. What's certain, though, is this: nobody leaves this place unchanged. Unless you're very lucky or very clever. And Perseus, he's gambling on both. You see, by now he's carrying everything he needs: the sword from the gods, the polished bronze shield from Athena, the winged sandals, the satchel, the helm of darkness. It's a toolkit for monster hunting that no mortal should reasonably possess. And yet here he is, stepping softly past stone faces frozen mid-scream, past a statue of a soldier whose eyes are still wet with terror, past a mother clutching a child she'll never finish shielding. He doesn't look directly at any of them. That's Athena's first rule. And now that you're here, it's probably a good time to mention you shouldn't either. Look down. Use the reflection in the shield if you must. Blink slowly. Stay calm, and keep your hands away from your face even if something itches. Trust me, that's how they get you, because Medusa is near. You can feel it. The air smells faintly of copper and seaweed, the kind of scent you only find in caves that were once underwater, back when the world was younger and still trying to figure out what it wanted to be. You and Perseus follow a narrow path now, winding between shattered columns and long-dead olive trees turned to stone. He walks slower, more deliberately. The sandals don't hover anymore. They skim just above the dust, like even the wings are afraid. And then you see it, her lair. At first, it looks like just another pile of ruins, more broken archways, more statues. But then the shadows deepen. The air turns cold, not wind cold, but bone deep, like a memory you've been trying to forget. You can hear something slithering just beneath the edge of sound, a dry, dragging hush like scales over stone. This is where Perseus will face her. But not yet. First, he needs to set the stage. He takes out the helm of darkness and slides it over his head. You blink and he's gone, just gone. The only sign he's still there is the soft sound of breath, the faint shimmer of disturbed air. The helm doesn't just hide you from sight, it removes you from presence, from memory, from narrative. Even the birds, if there were any, would forget you were ever here. He lifts the mirrored shield, careful to hold it just right. The angle has to be perfect. He's not just looking for Medusa, he's using the shield like a periscope, a mythological selfie stick with fatal consequences if used incorrectly. And here's something oddly specific and wonderful. One fringe theory suggests that the shield wasn't just a mirror. Some ancient accounts say it was polished obsidian, sacred volcanic glass used in divination. Which, if true, means Perseus might have been navigating both physically and spiritually through the lair. Historians still argue whether this detail points to shamanic traditions sneaking into early Greek myth, or if it was just an artistic flourish added by poets to spice up the danger. Either way, it worked, because as Perseus edges closer, you begin to see her. Not directly, remember, that's a one-way ticket to Statueville, but through the warped, dark reflection in the shield. And she's not what you expected, not some hissing monster with blood-stained claws. She's lying on the stone floor, her body half-curled, the snakes in her hair shifting restlessly as if in sleep. Her face is strangely peaceful, tired, almost human. Medusa doesn't look like a monster. She looks like a woman who's been hunted her whole life. And maybe she has. Depending on the version you believe, Medusa wasn't always this way. Some say she was a beautiful priestess, devoted to Athena, until Poseidon attacked her in the goddess's temple, an unforgivable violation that Athena punished not by blaming the god, but by cursing the woman, turning her into something the world would fear. Others say she was always a Gorgon, born monstrous. Her appearance, simply a reflection of her inner danger. Historians still argue whether Medusa represents feminine rage, divine injustice, or just a cautionary tale gone wildly out of control. But right now, as she breathes quietly on the cave floor, she looks like someone who never wanted any of this. And yet, here we are. Perseus raises the sword. You hold your breath, because the next heartbeat could shatter the silence. It happens so quickly you almost doubt it happened at all. 1 second Medusa's breathing, slow, steady, a whisper of life in a world that's forgotten motion, and the next, Perseus moves. A flicker of shadow through mirrored bronze. A precise step, a breath held, a heartbeat sharpened into steel. Then the blade falls. A single stroke, clean and cruel and silent. There is no scream, no thunder from the gods. Just a faint hiss as her serpents writhe in confusion, some still flicking their tongues as if trying to figure out what just happened. The body slumps with a soft, echo-less thud. It doesn't turn to stone. It just lies there, heavy with everything it once held. The curse, the grief, the memory of 1,000 stolen glances, and in Perseus's hands the head. He doesn't look at it directly, of course. He grips it by the hair, the strands already stiffening like dead vines, and he slides it quickly into the magical satchel the Hesperides gave him. The snakes keep moving inside the bag. You can hear them, a faint, papery rustle like dry leaves in autumn. Somehow, they're still alive, or something close to it. The curse hasn't ended, it's been contained. And just like that, the danger shifts, because now it's not Medusa who threatens the world, it's Perseus. You step backward, not entirely sure whether the bag might glance your way by accident. Because even tucked inside, even unseen, the Gorgon's head still radiates power. There's an ancient weight to it. A sense that the rules of reality have bent just a little in your presence. Like time got distracted. You and Perseus, don't linger. This isn't a place for reflection, not the metaphorical kind anyway. Not unless you're feeling very brave. You slip out the way you came, passing those same statues again, only now they look different. Sadder somehow, less terrifying and more tragic. Each one of them once had a story, a name, a last thought. Perseus doesn't speak. Neither do you. The silence stretches with you as you reach the edge of that stone-soaked wasteland, where the first green shoots reappear like shy guests returning to a party they weren't sure was still happening. The sky starts to shift, just a little, taking on color that feels almost like hope, and that's when the side quests begin. Because of course, this journey isn't over. It never is. You've got a bag containing a magical head that turns people to stone. Do you really think the universe is going to let you just walk home with that? No. No, my friend. Now the world notices you, and not all of it is friendly. First to greet you is the Titan Atlas. You remember him, right? The guy cursed to hold up the heavens as punishment after the Titanomachy, the big cosmic family feud between the Olympians and the older generation of gods. Well, you stumble right into his territory. And he's not thrilled about visitors. Towering and weary, Atlas looms above you like a mountain with opinions. His beard looks like it could house entire ecosystems, and his eyes carry the exhausted fury of someone who's been left on hold for eternity. He demands that Perseus leave or else. And Perseus, he doesn't even hesitate. He pulls out the bag, and boom, the moment the Gorgon's face is exposed, even briefly, Atlas begins to stiffen. His limbs lock, his eyes go wide, he doesn't fall, he becomes landscape. Literally. According to myth, Atlas is transformed into a mountain range. Some say the Atlas Mountains in North Africa. Which, if we're being honest, is either poetic justice or cosmic overkill, depending on how you feel about unsolicited guests. Fringe theories argue that this story was invented after people had already named the mountains, to give them a mythic backstory. Others suggest that the tale of Atlas turning into stone reflects older traditions of sacred mountains being linked to divine punishment or memory. Historians still argue whether Atlas was meant to symbolize cosmic endurance, geographical metaphor, or just a very dramatic bouncer for the western edge of myth. Either way, he's out of your hair now. But the journey back still won't be easy. You're still holding myth's most dangerous souvenir, and the gods are watching. Some cheer you on, others plot, because no one likes a mortal who completes their quest too quickly. It throws off the rhythm. That's when the storm comes. You barely see it forming before the clouds are rolling in thick, black, fast-moving like a pack of wolves across the sky. Rain lashes sideways. Thunder stomps through the heavens like a toddler with a grudge. It's not natural, this storm. You don't need a degree in ancient meteorology to know that someone, probably someone's, is trying to slow you down, and then you crash. Not into a mountain, not into the sea, but into her. Andromeda. She's chained to a rock, because of course she is. Let's back up slightly. You're walking along the coast, storm behind you, wind turning the waves wild and frothy. Then suddenly there she is. A woman bound by iron chains, wrists bleeding, dress torn, face tilted toward the sky with the expression of someone who's had it just about up to here with fate. This is the famous moment. The damsel, the dragon, the hero. Except you're standing there and realizing just how weird this whole setup is, because Andromeda isn't helpless. She's furious. Eyes narrowed. Lips pressed into a line that could cut glass. She sees Perseus and doesn't beg. She dares him to help. Turns out her kingdom ticked off Poseidon by boasting a little too hard about how beautiful she was. So the sea god sent a sea monster, a Cetus, to devour her as punishment for her mother's ego. You know, classic Poseidon stuff. And here's the twist. The monster's already coming. You see it in the water, ridges breaking the surface, barnacle-crusted fins slicing through the foam, a roar that sounds like tectonic plates shifting in protest. Perseus looks at the monster, then at the girl, then at you. And slowly he reaches into the satchel. He pulls out the head. Again. This time, he doesn't even blink. The sea monster meets Medusa's gaze, and mid-charge, it turns to stone. Right there in the surf. A giant, salt-stained sculpture now forever stuck in mid-lunge, waves crashing harmlessly against its frozen scales. You help free Andromeda. Her chains are ancient and rusted, but they break under Perseus's sword like they've been waiting for this moment for centuries. She doesn't thank him with tears or hugs. She just nods, then walks toward the shore with her head high, like she's been rescuing herself all along and just happened to allow a cameo. Which, honestly, might be the most heroic thing you've seen all night. The sea monster is still frozen in mid-roar when you and Perseus leave the beach behind. Andromeda walks beside him, quiet, sure-footed, unchained in more ways than one. You don't talk much on the journey back to her kingdom. The silence doesn't feel awkward. It feels earned. Like the calm after surviving a roller coaster made entirely of ancient curses, swordplay, and sea monsters. You're all processing. When you arrive at her family's palace, Perseus dripping salt water and sand, Andromeda with torn sleeves and stubborn dignity. The reception is, let's say, complicated. Her mother, Queen Cassiopeia, who started this whole mess by declaring Andromeda more beautiful than the sea nymphs, seems vaguely annoyed her daughter isn't dead. Her father, King Cepheus, is slightly more relieved, but still gives Perseus the kind of look fathers reserve for strangers holding swords around their daughters. So naturally, Perseus announces he's going to marry her. You can almost hear the record scratch. There's a pause so long it grows moss. Andromeda says nothing, her face unreadable. Her parents stare like someone just declared they're naming their baby Zeus. A few advisors cough into their togas, and you're standing there wondering if this is how political alliances used to work. Rescue a girl, then pencil in a wedding under miscellaneous. But hey, this is myth, and in myth things move fast, especially when the gods are watching. Soon a wedding is being prepared. Garlands are hung across marble columns. Harps are tuned. Tables sag under the weight of fruit, wine, and roasted goats stuffed with more roasted goats. Guests file in, some clearly just here for the food. The mood swings wildly between celebration and clenched teeth awkwardness. You get the distinct sense that the kingdom wasn't expecting Perseus to stick around, much less marry the princess he technically met yesterday while she was chained to a rock. And then, it gets worse. Because who crashes the wedding but Phineus, Andromeda's original fiancé? Yes, she was already betrothed. That bit somehow didn't come up during the sea monster crisis, probably because sea monster was the more urgent problem at the time. But now, Phineus storms into the banquet hall like a man who just got bumped from first class by someone holding a cursed relic. He's not happy. Andromeda looks unimpressed. And Perseus, he's probably thinking, I beheaded a mythological creature for this. Phineus demands she be returned to him. Her parents exchange guilty glances. It gets tense. Like swords at dawn kind of tense. Except it's not dawn. It's your wedding reception, which is objectively a bad time to start a duel, but here we are. A fight breaks out. You dive behind a fruit platter. Chairs go flying, plates shatter. Somewhere a bard keeps playing nervously on a lyre, hoping no one notices him. Perseus, realizing this is spiraling out of control, reaches for the only diplomatic tool he knows, the Gorgon's head. Yes, again. He pulls the satchel open and turns toward Phineus. A wave of stunned gasps ripples through the room like someone dropped ice down the back of time. Phineus goes still. Mid-shout, mid-bluster, mid-how dare why, and just like that he's stone. Frozen in place, one arm raised, eyes wide, mouth still arguing. Some guests scream, others bow. You've got to admit, Perseus's conflict resolution style is a bit rigid. It's hard to throw shade when the groom just petrified your cousin. Now the mood shifts again, fast. No one protests the marriage now. The king mumbles something about destiny. The queen adjusts a flower arrangement. The royal priest just shrugs and carries on with the ceremony. Andromeda, to her credit, doesn't look shocked. She stands beside Perseus with her shoulders back and her gaze forward. If she's still reeling from the speed of it all, she doesn't show it. Maybe she knows the only way to survive being a woman in a myth is to keep moving. Or maybe she's thinking 10 steps ahead. She is a princess, after all, and princesses often learn young how to navigate rooms full of wolves in silk robes. The wedding proceeds. Candles flicker. Vows are mumbled. You can't hear all the words over the soft hiss of the snakes still shifting inside the satchel, but it happens. Rings are exchanged, or maybe laurel crowns, depending on the tradition. And just like that, Perseus and Andromeda are declared husband and wife. You look around the hall and spot several guests carefully avoiding eye contact, with the bag on Perseus's hip. One man even starts casually sidestepping toward the exit, muttering something about a chariot meter running out. Fringe mythologies suggest the Gorgon head made more appearances than we're told. Some whisper that Perseus used it multiple times, often to enforce peace with a slightly stony emphasis. Others say Athena, who eventually received the head, only did so after threatening to take it back with force if Perseus didn't start using better judgment. Historians still argue whether the myth's multiple beheadings represent literal violence, symbolic purification, or just the ancient Greek equivalent of "don't test me." Either way, the party winds down. The music softens. The guests leave quietly with slightly more stiffness in their step than they arrived with. You, Perseus, and Andromeda stand at the edge of a new chapter. Behind you, a ruined banquet hall, several overturned tables, and one ex-fiancé who's now excellent at standing perfectly still. Ahead of you, a road winding homeward, a satchel growing heavier with every use, and the feeling that fate's not finished with you yet. You set out at dawn, or maybe it's just really well-lit fog. Hard to tell with mythological sunrises. They always feel like stage lighting designed for dramatic reentrances. Either way, Perseus and Andromeda are riding ahead, the wind lifting her veil slightly, his sword slapping against his side, and you trailing behind thinking, please let there be fewer cursed artifacts this time. The journey back to Seriphos, the island where it all began, is long. The air shifts from salt-slicked coastal breezes to drier, denser warmth. You pass goat herders who give you the kind of look people usually save for royalty or walking disasters. One of them drops his fig basket when he spots the glint of the mirrored shield. Another just whispers something about the stone boy and makes a sign to ward off evil. You wonder what stories got here before you did. Because stories have gotten here. People know the sea monster, the wedding, the frozen titan. Word travels fast when you're carrying a gorgon head and traveling with someone whose name ends in us. And back on Seriphos, things haven't exactly improved in your absence. King Polydex, yes, that guy, is still very much on the throne, which is really more of a decorative seat for bullying and power hoarding at this point. He's been trying to force Perseus's mother, Danae, into marrying him. Not with flowers and chocolate, mind you, but with that very special kind of pressure ancient kings were so fond of: imprisonment, threats, and the occasional oops, did I say that out loud? Political sabotage. Danae has resisted him every step of the way, though, her spirit's unbroken. And if the legends are even half true, she's managed to outwit palace guards, conceal secret messages, and rally sympathetic nobles without ever once raising her voice. Honestly, she's the real MVP of this story. Perseus doesn't waste time when you return. He walks straight into the palace like he owns it. The guards freeze, some step back. Others look at each other like, did you bring the backup plan? No, great. And then you're in the throne room. Polydex is there, lounging in a way that only tyrants and professional liars seem to master. He's mid-speech when you walk in, something about duty and destiny and how Danae is lucky to be considered his queen. You can feel the room tense up like a harp string right before it snaps. Perseus lets him finish, which is honestly generous. Then he steps forward, calmly reaches into the satchel, and if you guessed, he pulls out the Gorgon's head again. Well, congratulations, you now qualify as a prophet. The king barely has time to blink before the curse hits. His mouth opens, eyes flare, then silence. Just stone. Polydex is left mid-monologue, immortalized forever in the pose of someone explaining why he's not technically the villain. The palace goes quiet. Some guards drop their weapons. Others kneel. A few just run because at this point it's fairly clear the new management comes with mythic hardware. Perseus turns to his mother. She doesn't flinch at the stone statue. She just walks to him, touches his arm, and exhales like she's been holding that breath for years. You feel like clapping, but that might be weird. Andromeda steps into the room next. She and Danae lock eyes, no words, just a nod, like one survivor recognizing another. And just like that, Seriphos is free. Now, if this were a modern fairy tale, the scene might end there. But you know better by now, because with power comes consequence. And with myth comes cleanup. See the Gorgon's head, it's become a problem. You've used it 3 times now. Maybe 4 depending on how generous your tally is with monster categories. Each time it solves a problem, but leaves a trail of silent, stony people in its wake. And the gods are watching. Athena appears before anyone's even finished sweeping the throne room. She doesn't knock, doesn't blink. She just is standing there in full armor, owl-eyed and cool as moonlight. Her voice is low but firm, like she's narrating a chess game you're already losing. I'll be taking that, she says, gesturing to the satchel. Now, Athena gave Perseus a lot of his gear, true, but this feels less like a return and more like a quiet intervention. The head of Medusa, she explains, wasn't meant to be wielded indefinitely. Power like that, it seeps. It changes people. Myth has a way of becoming addiction if you don't let go. Reluctantly, Perseus hands it over. The snakes hiss softly, almost mournful, as Athena seals it away on her shield, the Aegis. From that moment forward, it becomes her symbol. Anyone who sees the Aegis will know, This is a goddess who's not playing around. Fringe scholars believe the aegis was actually a protective emblem from even older pre-Greek traditions. Some say the face on the shield wasn't always Medusa, but a symbol of primal female rage and protection. Historians still argue whether Medusa's head on Athena's shield was a trophy, a tribute, or a warning to anyone who dare underestimate women in battle or in myth. Either way, it's gone now. And you feel lighter, like the world is finally exhaling after holding its breath too long. What follows is a slow but satisfying return to something resembling peace. Danae is reinstated with honor. Andromeda is named co-ruler of her homeland, with new policies that do not involve sacrificing women to sea monsters. Thank you very much. Perseus doesn't stay to rule, he's not that guy. He's got other plans, quieter ones. You hear him mumbling something about building a family, maybe naming a city, or just planting olives and not fighting cursed beasts for a while. You spend a few more days on Seriphos, soaking in the calm, eating food that doesn't come with side quests, and watching the sun rise without expecting it to signal another divine test. But somewhere in your bones, you feel it. This isn't the end. The story of Perseus and Medusa has already left cracks in the world. People are talking. Gods are stirring. And far away, Zeus, your old sky-dwelling mischief god, is beginning to notice again. Because something about this tale, about you still being in it, it's setting the stage for another twist. It starts with thunder. Not the usual kind, the kind that rolls in from the sea and makes goats grumble in the hills. No, this thunder is personal, sharp, intentional, like someone dragging a chair across the marble floor of Olympus just to get your attention. You're standing at the edge of a meadow outside Seriphos, watching Perseus teach Andromeda how to throw a javelin without accidentally skewering a passing bird. When the first bolt lights up the sky, there's not a cloud in sight. Just a perfect streak of blue split down the middle by a flash that lands so close you feel it hum behind your teeth. Perseus turns. Andromeda tilts her head. You squint, and in the scorched grass where the lightning struck, something gleams. You walk toward it slowly, because you've read enough myths by now to know that picking up strange glowing objects is a great way to accidentally become a demigod or a frog. Still, curiosity wins. The gift is wrapped in gold, literally shimmering strands of condensed cloud stuff, braided around a small box no bigger than a helmet. It's warm in your hands, thrumming with subtle electricity. And there's no inscription, no seal, nothing except the undeniable smell of ozone and smugness. You open it. Inside is a feather, but not just any feather. It's long, curved, and glowing faintly from within like it remembers being lightning before it was plumage. And attached to it, barely visible, is a folded slip of parchment that reads, "For the Child of Storms when the time is right." Child of Storms. Okay, that's definitely a nickname nobody asked for. You show it to Perseus, who squints and says that's definitely Zeus-level weird. And he would know. The man was literally born because Zeus couldn't keep his divine self out of mortal affairs. And then you feel it like static crawling across your skin. He's watching again. See, you've been under the radar for a while. The gods were distracted with monster problems, weddings, power plays. But now, with Polydex gone, Andromeda safe, and the Gorgon head tucked away, the drama has cooled down just enough for Zeus to remember the original reason he showed up in the story. You, or more precisely Danae, his not-so-consensual partner in God-baby crime. Here's the thing about Zeus. He rarely leaves things unfinished. Even when he should. Even when the things are people with their own lives who never asked to be drafted into celestial love triangles. And yet, here it is. A sign, a gift, a message with all the subtlety of a sky god tossing lightning bolts from a cloud recliner. You ask Danae if she recognizes the feather. Her face goes pale. She touches it gently as if it might shock her. And then she says quietly, "He used to send those when he wanted me to listen." Yikes. Zeus had a courting method. Apparently, it involved ominous weather and cryptic messaging. Definitely not the healthiest relationship model. Still, she keeps it, says it may mean something's coming. Back in the palace, things start to shift in subtle ways. Servants whisper of odd dreams. Strange animals appear at dawn, owls with glowing eyes, foxes that vanish in mist. A man claiming to be an oracle arrives by boat, walks straight into the throne room, and then faints before he can say why he's there. Even Athena reappears briefly, this time in a dream. She tells Perseus to prepare, that all debts are paid in Olympus eventually. That's comforting or not. Fringe folklore from Thessaly once suggested that Zeus's gifts are tests, not rewards, that each time he intervenes, it opens a corridor, thin, fragile, between mortal action and divine meddling. And once opened, those corridors don't always close cleanly. Historians still argue whether this moment marks the true beginning of Perseus's legend or the turning point when his fate became irrevocably entangled with Olympus's agenda. Either way, the air around you starts to feel charged. Even simple things, a bowl of figs, the shadow of a hawk overhead, the sudden silence before a breeze, feel loaded with meaning. You find yourself glancing over your shoulder more often. Not out of fear exactly, more like expectation, like something's going to step through the veil of normalcy and tap you on the shoulder with a thunderbolt. Perseus begins to train harder. Not in the flashy, look at me, I'm a hero way. No, this is quieter, sharpening instincts, studying maps, practicing with sword and shield even after the sun goes down. He knows something's coming. Maybe he doesn't know what, but he knows how myth works, and myth never rests for long. Andromeda, too, grows more alert. She carries a dagger now, not for show. She talks about strategy, about keeping the people safe. You watch her pace the palace courtyard like a queen preparing for siege, even though no one's declared war. Not yet, but the gods don't need declarations. They send feathers, and riddles, and storms wrapped in silk. You keep the box by your bedside now, though you don't sleep much. The feather glows softly at night. Sometimes you hear a low hum from it like distant thunder arguing with itself. And then one night the wind changes. Not a breeze, not a gust, a shift, like the world is inhaling before a shout. You sit up in the dark, the feather humming louder now, and outside your window, the sky is flickering. Not lightning, something slower, more deliberate. Like the stars themselves are rearranging. You know in your bones what's coming next. Zeus is reaching through the veil again. And this time he's not just sending a message. He's coming in person. There's no roar this time. No lightning, no earthquake, no rain. Just a silence so complete it presses against your eardrums like velvet wrapped in stone. The kind of silence that makes birds freeze mid-note and even the crickets forget their lines. You're standing at the balcony, half asleep when the stars over Seriphos pause. Just stop moving, and from the center of them where the sky folds like fabric, a seam opens. Slowly, carefully, and out steps Zeus. Not the roaring, bearded, justice-hurling Zeus from Temple Mosaics. Not the gold-plated colossus who juggles thunderbolts and pride in equal measure. No, this Zeus is different. Smaller in a way, but sharper, wearing the shape of a man who knows exactly how much attention he's commanding without needing to do a thing about it. His robe is woven from wind. His eyes hold the exact moment right before a lightning strike. He doesn't look at you first, he looks at Danae. She steps into the courtyard, already awake, already knowing. Her hands don't tremble, not this time. There's a defiance in her spine you didn't expect. Zeus, she says simply. He answers her not with words, but with a look so layered in sorrow and something like awe, that you momentarily forget this is the guy who once turned into a swan to seduce someone. You'd expect thunderous declarations here, or divine excuses. But instead, he says something soft. I never stopped watching. Ugh, classic Zeus line. You'd roll your eyes if the air around you wasn't vibrating with the weight of it. He tells her he's here because time is folding in on itself, that the world below is shifting faster than Olympus can track, that the blood of heroes has a magnetic pull, and Perseus's name is beginning to echo in the halls of prophecy, even where it shouldn't yet. You can tell he didn't just come for Danae, though. He came for you. He turns to you like someone rereading a book they forgot they wrote. There's recognition there, interest, maybe even amusement. You're still standing, he says. Good. Yeah, thanks. Not for lack of trying on his part. Zeus starts to explain, but in the roundabout way only gods can get away with. He talks about balance, about how mortal choices ripple through the divine, how Medusa's death wasn't just a story, it was a shift. Something in the order of fate rethreaded itself, and the consequences are rippling out like cracks in marble. You want to ask what he means, but he cuts you off with a raised hand. He says the world of mortals is being watched more closely now, that there are factions in Olympus who believe the age of heroes must end before it destabilizes the whole system. Fringe traditions from the Orphic cults hint at this fear, the idea that every god carries a secret timeline, and when mortals start punching holes in those timelines, the threads begin to snarl. Historians still argue whether the hero age was ever meant to be so prolonged, or if the Olympians themselves are addicted to the drama they claim to disdain. And here's the twist. Zeus says he's not here to punish you or Perseus. He's here to offer a warning. Something is coming, he says, older than Olympus, older than the Titans. Your skin prickles. You've heard stories whispered by old sailors about pre-Olympian forces, primordial beings that don't take kindly to rulebooks, divine or otherwise. Zeus walks to the center of the courtyard and opens his hand. In it appears a single golden drachma, but instead of a king or a god, it bears the face of something swirling and unreadable. A symbol older than language. Keep this, he says. It will open a door only if you're not sure you should walk through it. Okay, comforting, vague, very Zeus. Then, before anyone can respond, before Danae can ask the questions clearly itching behind her calm expression, he turns to mist. No lightning, no spectacle, just gone, and the night swallows itself back into silence. The next morning the coin sits heavy in your palm. Not physically, it's light as paper, but something about it presses into your thoughts. Like it's always there, right at the edge of understanding. Perseus listens quietly as you recount what happened. He nods once. Then again, slower. Like a man preparing for an exam he never studied for but somehow already knows the answers to. Andromeda takes the coin and rolls it across her knuckles like it's a dagger hilt. She says it doesn't feel like anything sacred, just ancient, like it remembers things even the gods forgot. Later that day, Danae burns something in the courtyard. You watch smoke curl into the sky in tight spirals. She says it's an offering, not to Zeus, but to whatever else might be listening, just in case. That evening, a priestess from a distant island arrives unannounced. She's walked for days without sleep, says she dreamed of a coin, of stars flickering backwards, of a king swallowed by his own shadow. Her message is simple. The door is opening again. And you know she doesn't mean a literal door. Somewhere in the mountains, deep in the marble bones of the world, something is shifting. Waking, you think of the coin, the feather, the Gorgon's whisper still caught in the folds of your memory. This story isn't about monsters anymore, it's about myth itself. What happens when it tries to outgrow the gods who shaped it, and whether you like it or not, you're part of it now. It begins with an itch behind your eyes. Not the physical kind, not dust or tiredness, but something stranger. A sense that something is watching you from inside your own future, and it's trying to remember your face before it's been written. Every story you've heard about prophecy makes it sound glamorous, mysterious, poetic. But nobody tells you what it feels like when the prophecy starts chasing you back. At first, it's little things. Birds staring too long. Mirrors catching flickers of movement you didn't make. dream fragments that wake you up with the taste of metal on your tongue and a word you don't recognize echoing in your skull. The priestess, the one who arrived with cracked lips and wild eyes, won't sleep in a room with corners. She says the lines pull her toward something ancient, something waiting to finish a sentence started thousands of years ago. She tells you that prophecies aren't just told. Sometimes they hunt. You don't ask what that means, you already kind of know. The drachma Zeus left you sits on the edge of your nightstand. You never moved it, you never could, because every time you try to put it away, your fingers stop halfway, like some unseen thread is holding them still, like your body understands something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. One morning, Danae finds an olive tree growing overnight in the center of the palace courtyard. No roots cracked the marble. No saplings were planted. It's just there, full-grown, blooming, and pulsing with that quiet, divine hum. Athena again. Maybe, or maybe it's older than her. Perseus jokes that you're living in a myth so dense it's starting to sprout spontaneously. And you laugh, you do, but only because if you don't, you might unravel faster than the prophecy that's clearly circling you like a hungry dog. You start seeing a symbol appear around town, etched into doors, carved into candles, drawn into steam on bathhouse tiles. It looks like an eye but too many lashes, spiraling in on itself until it's more maze than vision. The priestess calls it Ophelos, the knot of fate, a place where all lines cross but none can be followed straight. According to fringe myth from the island of Lemnos, the Ophelos symbol only appears when a mortal is being watched by 3 or more divine beings at once. A sort of cosmic, we need to talk post-it note stuck to the fabric of reality. Historians still argue whether this symbol was meant to protect the marked individual or prepare them for annihilation. Depends who you ask. Depends who's listening. And at this point, you can't help but feel like something is listening. One night, you dream of a corridor made of whispering cloth, walls that breathe, a floor that shifts beneath you like sand, then stone, then fire. You walk it until you reach a door, and when you open it, you see yourself. Older, tired, smiling, holding the coin, whispering something you can't quite make out. You wake up gasping. The coin is missing. You tear apart your room. Panic clutches your ribs. You check the windows, the cracks in the floor, even the folds of your blanket, thinking maybe you rolled over it in sleep. But it's just gone, until you find it, resting in your shoe, flipped to the side that wasn't there before. Now the face shows a tree, not the coin Zeus gave you exactly, something else. Like it's morphed again, keeping pace with the story without asking your permission. Perseus sees it and his expression darkens. He says you've entered the middle now, the sticky part of the tale, when even the gods can't untangle what's myth and what's momentum. From then on, things accelerate. Messages arrive not on parchment but in riddles from wandering children. A boy selling bread in the market pauses mid-sale to say, "The silver one is bleeding." You ask what he means. He blinks, confused, doesn't remember saying anything strange at all. Another night, a raven drops a stone at your feet. It's smooth, perfectly round and warm. You pick it up and hear faint whispers in languages you don't speak, somehow both comforting and deeply wrong. The priestess tells you the fabric of fate is fraying, that threads meant to stay hidden are now rising to the surface, and that your name is now written in places you've never been. There's a temple ruin on the cliffs, abandoned since the last priest of Apollo fell silent. One morning, a fisherwoman claims to have seen your silhouette standing in its doorway before dawn. Except you were asleep in your bed at the time, or at least, you thought you were. Andromeda begins to keep a journal, not for strategy or ruling, but to track the strange coincidences that now seem to follow you everywhere. The count is at 14 when she looks up and says, "We're not chasing fate anymore, it's circling us." And she's right, you're not the hero here, not in the traditional sense, but you are anchoring something old, something that's waking up and realizing it left unfinished business buried in myth. The whispers begin using your name, not loudly, not in your ear, but in dreams. in the rustle of trees, in the way the wind slaps cloth against the walls at just the right moment to sound like your syllables. One day, you step outside and see a small child holding a stick, drawing spirals in the dirt. She looks up and says, "The one who knows but doesn't remember will open the gate." And then she skips away. Yeah, cool, totally normal stuff happening. By now, even the palace guards don't question when you wander out at night and whisper to olive trees. Even Danae has started carrying protective charms from 3 different traditions, none of which she believes in, but all of which she hopes might just slightly annoy whatever's watching. The thing is, Zeus didn't bring this prophecy. He stepped in front of it, tried to delay it, reroute it. Buy time in whatever divine currency gods use when they panic. But it's here now. And it's hunting, not to destroy you, but to finish you, not as a person, but as a story. And stories don't end just because you're ready. They end when the last line is written, and you can feel the pen lowering already. You weren't planning to go looking for it today, but the air smells like hot copper and lavender, and the shadows are falling in directions they shouldn't, and really, what else are you going to do? Pretend things are still normal. Pretend you're not halfway down a myth that's clearly got your name scribbled in the margins in red ink. The gate finds you before you find it. It's at the edge of a ravine behind the oldest part of the island, where the cliffs drop too sharply to build on and even the goats get nervous. You feel it before you see it. A pull behind your breastbone, like being drawn into the memory of a place you've never visited. There's no inscription, no grand arch. Just 2 vertical stones, perfectly smooth, standing 10 feet apart with a space between them that hums very quietly when you step too close. Like a whisper inside your teeth. And it's colder here, just a little, but enough to make your skin ripple. You hold the coin in your hand, it's warm again. Buzzing slightly like a sleeping bird, you turn it over. This time the image is neither the faceless god nor the tree. It's a shape, a gate, and yeah, of course it matches the stones in front of you exactly. No instructions, no warning, just that low, endless hum. You step through. The world does not explode or melt or immediately smite you, but it does shift. The moment your foot clears the stones, your ears pop like you've gone underwater, but the air is still dry. The sky is still there, but the light is wrong. Brighter but softer, like candlelight reflected off bone. You're standing on a stone path that stretches forward into what looks like a ruin frozen mid-collapse, except nothing's crumbling, nothing moves, and everything is carved in a style you've never seen before. Not Greek, not Titan, not even Minoan fringe-level obscure, just other. Danae and Perseus step in after you, blinking slowly like they're adjusting to a color that doesn't technically exist. Andromeda stands still for a long moment, her hand on the stone gate behind you. Then she follows, eyes scanning everything like a queen who already knows she'll have to explain this later to someone she doesn't trust. The priestess doesn't come through. She bows once, deeply, then sits cross-legged in front of the gate and begins to hum. Not like a song, more like a warning siren wrapped in a lullaby. Inside, the silence is more than quiet. It's intentional. You walk past statues frozen mid-speech, mouths open in some eternal sermon. Their eyes are blank, not in that unfinished sculpture way, but in that I once saw something so old it took my sight with it way. The deeper you go, the more the walls begin to shimmer, not like gold, not like magic, like memory. The air tastes like old paper and stones soaked in honey. There's a chamber at the end, circular, unfinished, and there in the center of the floor is a pool. Not water, not oil, something else. A liquid that moves too slowly, reflects things that aren't behind you. You look in and see yourself, not how you are now, but how you might have been, if you'd taken different paths, if you'd never opened the gate, or if you'd opened it much, much earlier. Perseus touches the edge and recoils instantly. He mutters something about voices, a sound like breathing inside his head. Danae whispers, "It's not showing us. It's remembering us." According to one of the more obscure Orphic scrolls, Scrolls so strange most scholars treat them like fever dreams. There are places in the world that remember people before they exist. Places that catalog potential outcomes like libraries catalog authors they haven't met yet. And this feels like one of those places. Historians still argue whether these proto-temples were divine tools or divine accidents, structures left behind by beings older than the Olympians, beings who didn't quite think in terms of time or purpose the way we do. The coin grows cold in your hand. The reflection in the pool changes. Now it shows the island. Serifos cracked down the middle like a split stone, fires in the hills, storms over the palace, and something rising from the sea, not a creature, not exactly, more like a shape that forgets to stay shaped. And you know then, this gate didn't just remember you, it warned you, and you're late. The gate behind you flickers, you all turn at once, and that's when you hear it, footsteps, not human, not God. Rhythmic, wet, hollow, like someone walking on bones wrapped in seaweed. You don't see anything yet, but you know it's coming. Andromeda draws her blade, slow and deliberate. Perseus exhales once, mutters something about how he thought slaying Medusa would be the weird part of his life. Danae just stares forward, eyes narrowing, one hand still on the hilt of a knife she hasn't unsheathed in a decade. And you hold the coin tight and whisper a word you didn't know you knew. The coin glows faintly, just enough to illuminate something in the ceiling above. A mural, painted in a spiral, moving outward from the center. It shows the gods being born, then being shaped by something outside them, then fleeing, then returning, and finally one god not named, not pictured, just represented by an empty circle, stepping into gold rain and disappearing into the world of mortals. Zeus, but not just Zeus. The mural suggests he wasn't the first to do it, only the most recent. And this place, this was the vault where those transformations were recorded, where divine disguises were invented. You realize slowly that the gate wasn't meant to keep mortals out. It was meant to keep something else in. And now, here you all are, looking directly into a memory that never wanted to be remembered. And the footsteps are getting louder. You don't speak. No one does. There's no room for words when you realize the thing coming isn't just a visitor, it's a consequence. You back slowly toward the pool, though every instinct in your body is screaming not to look away from the passage. Because those footsteps aren't random. They are deliberate, measured like a heartbeat in reverse. The mural above you, the one that just casually rewrote divine history, starts to fade. Not like dust or time or neglect, like it's being deleted, like whatever's coming down that corridor doesn't want witnesses. You feel a crackle in the air, the kind that comes just before a thunderstorm, but there are no clouds here, no sky you can see, only that wrong-colored light pressing against the stone like it's trying not to flinch. The first part of the creature to appear is a shadow that doesn't match the shape making it. Its legs are too many and too few, depending on how you tilt your head. Its skin, or maybe its surface, shifts like wet gold poured over broken statues. You think of the coin again, the warmth, the transformations, the sudden disappearances, and you start to understand. Zeus didn't turn into a shower of gold because it was beautiful. He didn't do it for flair or drama or seduction. He did it because gold, liquid, brilliant, reflective, was the only form strong enough to hold something out of time, something beneath the Olympians, something that shouldn't have survived the first stories, let alone the ones told afterward. The being before you doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. Every part of your body feels its attention like pressure in your bones. Andromeda raises her blade but doesn't advance. Perseus mutters the names of monsters he's faced and says quietly that none of them felt like this. Danae whispers, "It's not a god, it's a price." The being moves closer, fluid and angular all at once. And you notice something. Wherever it passes, the stone behind it forgets what it was. Etchings vanish. Textures flatten, even dust ceases to exist. Historians still argue whether ancient temples were destroyed by time, natural disasters, or divine tantrums. But maybe, just maybe, they were scrubbed clean by something like this. not out of malice, but out of necessity. You step forward, not because you want to, but because the coin in your palm pulses hard enough to make your fingers twitch. The being sees you. It doesn't look at you, it registers you, and something in its golden form flickers like a memory glitching. You see just for a moment a face, not yours, not Danae's, not Zeus's, but someone who used to be, then it's gone again. You ask, not with words, but with presence, why it's here, what it wants, what it remembers, and the answer comes not in sound, but in understanding. Zeus made a bargain, long ago, before Olympus was even Olympus. To become king, to take form, to wield lightning and rule the skies, he needed to use something older, something forgotten by the Titans and buried beneath Mount Othrys during the First War. That something agreed, but only temporarily, and only under very specific conditions. One of which was, when the gold is used in desire, not war, not diplomacy, not vengeance, but desire, the contract reactivates. Guess what happened when he visited Danae in her tower? Desire. Golden rain, boom, claws triggered, and now here you are, tied to it, the offspring of a divine mistake and an ancient condition. The being wants to finish the bargain. Not by killing you, that would be easy. No, by absorbing what's been passed down, the memory of what happened, the spark of what Zeus took. It reaches out, not with a limb, but with a shimmer in the air like a heat wave made of math and grief. And that's when Danae steps between you, not shouting, not grandstanding, just standing, as if being your mother still counts for something in the face of pre-Olympian cosmic bureaucracy. The being pauses, actually pauses, and you feel deep in your chest that you have a choice now, not between right and wrong, but between remembering and forgetting. If you throw the coin into the pool, the memory is erased. The being leaves. No gate, no whispers, no prophecy, just life, normal, but if you keep it, if you choose to hold the memory, you become part of the chain. The next link, not divine, not mortal, but the knot in between, and that has its own consequences. You look to Danae, to Perseus, to Andromeda, and you realize something important. They're not afraid of the being, they're afraid of what you might choose. The coin in your hand is hot again, not burning, but heavy with meaning. You inhale once, then drop the coin into the pool. There's no explosion, no flash of light, just silence, and a slow, ripple-less sigh that travels across the chamber like a final exhale. The being looks at you one last time, then turns and walks back into the dark, each step erasing the stone behind it, until nothing remains but the gate and your reflection in the now empty pool. You don't move for a long time. Nobody does. Because silence, when it's this complete, isn't just quiet, it's a statement. The gate behind you still stands, but the hum is gone. No more buzz against your teeth. No shimmer in the air. Just two cold stones in a cold room that doesn't remember what it was built for anymore. And the pool, the eerie pool that showed possibilities and regrets and secrets that never should have been mapped. Yeah, that's gone too. Still there physically, but now it only reflects your face. No distortions, no golden glimmers, just you, looking a little older than you were a minute ago. You back away from it slowly, half expecting the ground to open or the sky to snap shut or some ancient voice to bellow wrong choice and toss you into a volcano. But no, the moment passes, and everything stays still. Perseus is the first to speak. Well, mutter really, something about how he prefers snakes and beheadings over contracts and metaphysics. Danae doesn't say anything, but she steps beside you and touches your elbow just long enough to make sure you're still solid. Still here, still you. Andromeda walks to the gate and puts her hand on one of the stones. No hum, she says quietly, like she's noting a change in the weather. Like that means the story really is over. Except you're not sure it is. Because while the room has forgotten, no inscriptions, no energy, no reflective secrets, you haven't. You remember the mural, the ripple of unbeing that slithered through history. You remember what Zeus did, what he borrowed, and what he left behind. And most of all, you remember that being, the wrongness of it. The way it didn't move like a creature, but like a memory collapsing in real time. Historians still argue whether the myth of Danae was symbolic, literal, or just a cautionary tale meant to scare young girls about open windows. But you know now it wasn't any of those. It was a containment protocol, and it failed, sort of. Not because the being broke free, but because memory, real memory, the kind that sings in your bones, can't be erased by rituals or pools or decisions made in fear. And here you are, still remembering, outside. The world is quiet again. You pass through the gate and the sun is lower in the sky, like time paused politely while you dealt with cosmic nonsense. The priestess is gone. No sign of a struggle, no footprints in the dust. Just that same flat stone where she sat, still warm to the touch. Think she knew what would happen? Perseus asks, rubbing the back of his neck. Danae sighs. She knew something. That's usually enough when it comes to ancient women and world-ending secrets. Andromeda doesn't speak. She's staring out toward the ocean, where a ship rocks gently in the shallows. You didn't leave it there, but it's waiting anyway, like part of the story that knew how to reappear at just the right time. You walk toward it without speaking. No one's in the mood for talking right now. The boat creaks as you step aboard, ropes shifting slightly, like it's adjusting to your weight and your thoughts. As you drift away from the shore, the island grows smaller, and so does the memory of the chamber, the pool, the mural, the being. But only in the way that a nightmare fades. You still remember, you will remember, just more quietly now, like a song with no chorus. There's a small pouch tucked under one of the boat benches. You open it, expecting food, maybe tools, but no, it's filled with coins. Not gold ones, just old drachmas. Except one of them is gold. And it's warm, your stomach drops. You pull it out, it's the coin. The coin, except now the image has changed again. It doesn't show a gate, or a god, or a memory. It shows a hand letting go of something into water. And suddenly, you're not so sure you erased anything at all. Maybe you just moved it, somewhere deeper, somewhere less obvious. A fringe theory, one mocked even in late classical philosophy, claimed that the gods didn't create humanity. They descended into it. As in, stepped down from something older and wore mortal forms like puppets carved from lightning and clay. And when they were done, they left just enough of themselves behind to keep the story breathing. What if this is that leftover breath? What if Zeus didn't turn into golden rain to seduce but to escape? And what if that escape worked, but only just barely? You close your fingers around the coin. The boat keeps drifting. And behind you, the sun finally touches the sea. You sit in silence for a long time, because even though you walked through a gate that forgot itself, even though you made the hard choice, even though you tried to let the past be past, you're still holding something in your palm that hums like an unfinished sentence. And you know, deep in the part of your brain that still sees dreams like roadmaps, this story isn't done. It's just pausing. You keep the coin tucked in a fold of your belt, wrapped in cloth that probably belonged to a goat once. Not because you're afraid of it, but because you're not ready to look at it again just yet. Like a photo of someone you miss but don't fully trust. The sea rocks your boat gently for hours, maybe days. Hard to say when the sun keeps shifting like it's as unsure as you are. No one asks where you're going. No one tries to take the rudder. The boat moves on its own with a confidence none of you share anymore. Eventually, you reach a coast that looks familiar and wrong at the same time. Olive trees, dusty cliffs, goats chewing like philosophers who have seen too much, but something's off. Perseus stretches his arms and says it smells like mainland Greece but older. Like if Greece had a grandmother and she still used lavender soap and threatened people with fish, he mutters. Which, to be fair, is kind of accurate. You step off the boat and the ground greets your feet like it missed them. And you know, without knowing why, that this place is part of what the gold rain touched. Not directly, but in the way echoes keep bouncing after the sound is gone. You walk through villages with names you don't recognize but sounds you almost remember. No one greets you. No one runs, they just watch. Like they're waiting for something to happen and hoping it won't. You sleep in a stone barn the first night. The stars above you are too bright, and they move just a little too fast. as if the sky is remembering something else it used to be. Danae wakes you in the middle of the night. She doesn't speak, just points. And there, standing at the edge of the field, is a woman in a robe stitched with metallic thread. Not gold exactly, more like something pretending to be gold but not committing. She's not watching you. She's waiting for you to watch her. You walk over slowly. She doesn't move. And when you get close enough, you see her eyes shimmer like coins dropped in water. She speaks without sound. The words land in your head already unpacked and alphabetized. You held it. You let it go, but it followed anyway. You try to ask who she is. Not important, she replies in your brain. Names are for gods and fools, I'm neither. That's comforting, sort of. She tells you the coin you carry isn't a coin anymore, it's a seed, and you planted it. In the water, in the memory, in yourself, now it's growing. You don't get to unplant a seed, she says. And if it grows the wrong way, you won't be the one to pay the price. You ask what that means. She tilts her head and finally speaks out loud. You already know. That's why you wrapped it in goat cloth and haven't slept right since. You look down. The coin is vibrating faintly in your belt, not like danger, more like hunger. Historians still argue whether magical artifacts in ancient myths were metaphorical expressions of power or actual enchanted objects with residual divine energy. But those historians didn't have one trying to pulse through their pants while a mystic stared them down in a wheat field. So, grain of salt. The woman touches your forehead gently. Don't throw it away again. This time it chooses where to land. And then she's gone. No smoke, no fade out, just gone, like she stepped back into a story that hadn't been told yet. Perseus finds you there a few minutes later, hands you a flask of something vaguely wine-like and exactly awful. Did she give you the big spooky warning too? He asks, you nod, and he just shrugs. Yeah, welcome to Club Consequences. You travel for a few days. No destination, just motion, because stillness now feels like permission for whatever's growing to sprout through your skin. You reach a temple ruin. Old, cracked, forgotten. There's a stone lion with no head and stairs that go down into the earth. You descend without question, and at the bottom there it is again. The pool, but this time it's dry, cracked like old parchment. And in the center, a tiny sprout of gold pushing up through the stone. Yeah, it's growing all right. Danae says nothing. She kneels beside it like it's her child. Andromeda stares like it might bite. Perseus tosses a pebble at it, and when the pebble hits the sprout, it melts. Not sizzles, melts. The ground hums softly. You step closer and kneel. The sprout hums back. It's not a plant. It's memory taking root. The part of Zeus he thought he escaped. The part of you that was always more than just blood and fate. You're not just remembering anymore, you're carrying. And the story, the real one, is getting ready to bloom. The sprout doesn't stay small. Of course it doesn't. That would be way too easy. By the next morning, it's taller, barely, but enough that everyone notices. Its stem is glossier than before, thin veins of shimmering light run through it like lightning caught in syrup. And beneath it, the stone of the dry pool looks less like ruin and more like rebirth. You crouch beside it and lay a hand on the ground, warm and not sun-warmed. This heat is internal, a pulse, like a heartbeat buried beneath the surface. You pull your hand back quickly. The stone remembers something, and now it's remembering you. Perseus suggests torching it. I mean, we've got wine. We've got fire. Boom, divine weed killer. He says with a grin that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You shake your head. Burning this thing might just wake it up faster. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greek myths encoded warnings about environmental changes, land responding to divine trauma, oceans swelling with guilt. But what you're witnessing doesn't feel like allegory. It feels like consequence. Danae watches the sprout with a mixture of awe and guilt. She touches her belly unconsciously, not because she's pregnant again, she's not, but because she remembers the first golden rain, the one that brought you into the world, the one that shouldn't have been anything more than a shimmering lie. Andromeda stands a few feet away, arms crossed. She's pregnant, she says suddenly, staring at the sprout. You all turn, Danae's mouth parts slightly. No, I'm not. Andromeda's eyes stay fixed on the gold stem. No, not you, it's ridiculous, it's poetic nonsense. But you know exactly what she means. This sprout isn't just growing, it's gestating. Something is coming through. The next village you pass through confirms it. Children there don't blink when they see the golden sprout strapped to your pack. Wait, what? Yeah, it's on your back now, you didn't mean to carry it. But at some point, maybe during a water break or a moment of distracted awe, the ground released it. And your hand reached out, and now you're the one bringing it forward. No roots. No soil, it doesn't need them. It grows by memory and movement. Every step you take feeds it something invisible and ancient and terrifying. You rest in a ruined amphitheater that night. The wind whispers through the broken seats. And somewhere far off, you hear a lullaby sung in a language that never had an alphabet. You dream of stars raining down like fireflies, but instead of burning, they plant themselves in the ground. And from each crater, another sprout rises. Not golden, not yet, but shining in the dark like newborn gods with no idea how dangerous they are. When you wake, you feel older, not tired, older, like part of you remembers the beginning of something you weren't alive for. The sprout has changed, it's begun to branch. One tendril curls toward Danae as you sleep, another toward Perseus. The third points to the sky, not the sun, just the sky, like it's trying to find a hole to crawl through. A fringe theory in mythic studies once suggested that divine artifacts didn't contain power, they were passageways for power to return. As in, they called things home. And this sprout, yeah, it's calling. Perseus wakes with a start. Nope, he says flatly. I don't like when plants pick favorites. You don't either, but you don't stop walking. Each village you pass shows more signs. Wells bubbling with warmth, children humming in unison when they've never met, old women dreaming of feathers and rain. The world is responding. You try burying the sprout again. Just to see, you wrap it in a thick cloth, press it under soil near a dead fig tree and walk away. 3 hours later, it's back. No footsteps. No fanfare, just sitting in your pack again. It's yours now, whether you like it or not. Danae offers to carry it. So does Andromeda. But neither can hold it more than a minute without shaking. Only you can carry it. And each day, it grows more connected to you. It curls gently toward your heartbeat when you sleep. It flutters when you lie. It hums when you remember things too vividly. The world is no longer just background, it's a participant now. Flocks of birds follow you for days. Foxes gather at the edge of clearings and watch. A river shifts its course slightly so you don't get your feet wet. That part is nice, actually, thanks, river. But it's all too much. You miss silence. You miss normal, even if normal was never really real. You ask Danae what she remembers about the first time. The rain wasn't rain, she says quietly. It came through stone, no clouds, no sky, just through the ceiling of my room, like it had been waiting for the right moment to slip in. She looks at the sprout, and it didn't stop until I said yes. She's not crying, but her voice has that paper-thin quality that says maybe she should be. You sit with that for a long while, and then you understand. This thing, this growing seed of what used to be Zeus, isn't a god anymore. It's not even a memory. It's a story that refuses to be forgotten. A root system for truth, for guilt, for everything the golden rain was supposed to bury. You find a cave carved into the hillside near a hot spring. The air is thick and smells like old magic. You step inside, and on the walls, paintings of you, of Danae, of the sprout, of the gold turning into vines and the vines swallowing the sky. And beneath it, an inscription in characters older than Greek, older than even Minoan symbols. You trace them carefully. They hum. And suddenly you hear the past. Not words, but sounds of choices, of God stepping down into forms they couldn't escape from, and a single word whispered over and over. Return, return, return. You back out of the cave. You don't need to know more. You already know too much. The sprout shivers in your pack. And somewhere, far behind you or maybe ahead, the world answers back. The first time you see them, they're standing perfectly still in a dry orchard, with dead almond trees and boots full of dust. 12 of them, cloaked in gray fabric that looks like it was woven from cobwebs and thunderclouds. They don't blink, they don't move, they just stare. You freeze. Not because you're afraid, though okay, yes, you are, but because something in you remembers them, even though you've definitely never met a dozen silent cultists in the middle of a ghost orchard before. They step forward in unison. No footsteps. Just the sound of wind remembering how to speak. Perseus mutters something under his breath that sounds a lot like nope, 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 all the way back to the sea, but he doesn't move either. The tallest of them bows slightly. You expect a creepy chant or a long-forgotten language. Instead, she says, "We have waited for you." Well, that's always a great start. You ask what they're waiting for. She points to your pack, or more precisely, to the sprout inside it. The return of the branch of rain. That sounds poetic until you remember it's a polite way of saying a golden seedling made from a horny thunder god's questionable life choices. They invite you to follow them. Invite being a strong word. More like, they walk away expecting you to follow, and you do, because what else are you going to do? The cult, because let's not pretend they're anything else, leads you through a narrow mountain pass. Danae whispers that the shape of the rocks matches a myth about a hidden shrine to lost gods. Not the famous ones, not the ones with statues and temples, but the gods that got erased when other stories won. Historians still argue whether these erased gods ever truly existed, or whether they were invented as metaphorical placeholders for things people didn't want to name, like grief or shame or inconvenient truths. But the closer you get to the shrine, the more real those forgotten names feel, and here's the weird part. The golden sprout likes this place. It hums gently inside your pack, warm and steady, like a heartbeat syncing with the mountain itself. And when you finally reach the shrine, you understand why. It's not just a temple, it's a cradle, built into the rocks, half swallowed by time, but unmistakably designed to hold something. A basin of smooth obsidian in the center, flanked by two statues with blank faces and outstretched arms. And at the bottom of the basin, a faded circle etched in gold leaf. Your sprout pulses when it sees it. Yes, sees it, and you feel a tug in your spine like it's trying to leap out of you and root itself right there in that bowl of stone and memory. The cultists kneel in silence. Even Perseus lowers his eyes. Andromeda doesn't. She keeps her gaze fixed and fierce, arms crossed, daring whatever lives here to make the first move. Danae breathes deeply. This is where he first descended, before he found me. The leader of the cult, her name is Thesmia, apparently nods solemnly. The rain began here, not from above, from within. Your brain tries to wrap itself around that. What does it mean for rain to start underground? Thesmia explains slowly that Zeus didn't become the rain, he followed it. The first golden mist came through this mountain, drawn into the world by a ritual long lost to time, or so they thought, until you showed up. Sprout and all, they call it the awakening. You call it terrible news. You try to ask if this awakening is optional, like can we reschedule for never? Thesmia smiles. The branch has chosen, it must bloom. Yeah, that's never good. They begin preparing the shrine. They dust ancient sigils with olive ash. They arrange amphorae around the edge of the basin. One of the cultists sings a low, droning hymn that sounds like thunder trying to weep. And the sprout in your bag grows heavy. You don't even remember lifting it, but suddenly it's in your hands. And it's taller than you now. A soft shimmer coats the tips of its leaves. One drop of gold slips off and hits the stone with a clang, not a splash. Perseus leans over to whisper, "If that thing starts talking, I'm out." You kind of agree. You step to the basin, not because you want to, but because your feet have apparently decided they belong to fate now. The moment the sprout touches the gold ring etched in the stone, everything changes. The air grows thick. The obsidian ripples like liquid, and the mountain groans, not like it's in pain, more like it's remembering how to sing. Flashes of memory slam into your mind like lightning bolts through a stained glass window. You see Zeus, not majestic, not thunder-wielding, but small. Curious. Lonely, you see him reaching not for power but for connection. And then you see the moment he found the ritual, the cave, the bowl, the golden rain. You see him choose it, not to conquer, but to hide. To pour himself into something gentle, something flowing, something that wouldn't look him in the eye and demand answers. And that choice, it changed the world. Not just you, not just Danae, but everything touched by water and story. And now the sprout is flowering. The petals open like scrolls unfurling in slow motion. Each one is a memory, not yours, not his, but shared, and you finally understand. This isn't a curse, it's a confession. Zeus poured his regrets into the rain, and now they're growing, becoming visible, becoming real. Thesmia whispers, "Do you see now why we waited?" You do, and it's terrifying. Because what blooms here isn't just a flower, it's a doorway to every mistake ever wrapped in myth, to every truth disguised as thunder, and whether it should open or not, well, that choice is now in your hands. You stand at the edge of the basin as the flower begins to unfurl its second layer of petals. They're softer now, almost translucent, like slivers of dawn wrapped in dew. Each one emits a different scent, none of which you can quite name, but they stir something unmistakable in your chest. Grief, wonder, something like homesickness, even though you've never been here before in your life. The cultists, still kneeling, hum in unison. Their song winds up the walls of the cavern like vines looking for light. And the sprout, the bloom, the branch, the living memory of a god's strange transformation, it's still opening, still humming, still growing heavier in your hands, like it knows the weight of this moment better than you do. Danae steps up beside you. Her eyes shimmer not with tears but with recognition. She's been here before, not physically, but in dreams or memories passed down like inherited scars. Do you know what happens if you let it open? You ask. She doesn't blink. I think we stop forgetting. You look around the shrine, at the ancient symbols etched in soot and resin, at the basin that looks more like a birth canal now than a bowl, at the roots of the mountain pressing in from above like they're eavesdropping, and you realize this place wasn't just built to hold something, it was built to remember. That's when the bloom shifts, not violently, just deliberately. It turns its petals toward you like an eye adjusting to the light, and inside, curled in the center like a fetal storm, is a pulse. Not light, not blood, something in between. You see flashes. Zeus alone on Mount Ida, watching mortals laugh and dance without him. Zeus hiding in the form of mist, not out of lust, but because it was the only way he could be present without being seen. You see his tears mixing with summer rain, his loneliness wrapped in gold because gold, at least, is worth something. One scholarly theory even suggests that the myth of Zeus and Danae was originally a metaphor for seasonal drought and the first arrival of irrigation. Zeus, as water, entering the parched earth. Historians still argue whether this theory whitewashes a darker story or unlocks a deeper, ancient truth. But right now, as the bloom fully opens and that pulse begins to rise, you're not arguing theories, you're standing inside the question itself. And here's the wildest part. You realize the flower isn't just a memory, it's a choice. A living embodiment of a god's wish to become less godlike, to disappear into something softer, to let go. You glance back at the cult. They're still kneeling, still humming, their faces serene like monks watching stars be born. But they don't know what comes next either. They want you to open the bloom completely, to let it finish whatever cycle it started thousands of years ago. But none of them have the bloodline. None of them carry the echo of the golden rain inside them. You do, because you touched it, because you carried the seed, because you walked willingly into a storm without asking where the thunder sleeps. And now it's asking you to decide. Let the bloom open fully and risk unleashing something divine and irreversible into the world, or close it, bury it, and let history forget again. You look at Danae, who simply says, "It's always been your choice." He wanted it that way. Perseus, hands trembling, mutters, "I'm voting for the option where the world doesn't explode, but you do you." Andromeda, arms crossed but eyes soft, adds, "Whatever you decide, make it mean something." No pressure or anything. You feel the stem tighten under your fingers and you realize the bloom knows you're stalling. It's starting to close again. Slowly, like a door shutting on a truth that only knocks once. You can't lose this moment. Not again. So you lean in, whisper something only you can hear, and place the bloom gently into the center of the basin. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the entire shrine begins to glow, not with light but with memory. Walls shimmer with visions of every time Zeus ever tried to hide from himself. As a swan, as a bull, as mist, as thunder, and in every form he's not chasing power. He's running from shame, not shame for what he's done, but shame for who he could have been. Because what is godhood, really, if not the constant pressure to be everything while never being understood? And now his final form blooms completely. The petals rise like 1,000 arms, reaching skyward as golden rain begins to fall from the cavern ceiling. Not from outside, from memory, from inside the mountain. Each drop a confession, each drop a truth. You lift your face to it. It's not wet. It's not even cold, it's light, warm and soft, and almost too gentle to be real. You feel the stories pressing into your skin. You hear laughter from 1,000 summers ago. You see children watching the sky not with fear but with joy. You smell thyme and salt and the breath of old gods finally exhaling. Danae holds out her hand and catches a drop. It doesn't vanish. It nestles into her palm like a sleeping ember. She closes her fingers around it, and when she opens them, it's a seed. Another one, smaller but real. Andromeda, stunned, whispers, "You made more. Not just memory, not just myth, possibility." The cultists begin to weep silently, their tears mixing with the golden rain as they gently lie down, as if preparing to become part of the shrine itself. Maybe that's what they were waiting for all along. Not an ending, but a beginning, and the shrine, no, the cradle pulses with new life. You can feel it rooting beneath the stone, reaching through time, threading through history like a vine returning to forgotten soil. This is what Zeus became, not a conqueror, not a god, but a story that grows new branches with each telling. And now you carry it, in your skin, in your memory, in your choice, and suddenly you're not afraid anymore. You step back. Let the bloom finish its song. And the shrine exhales one last time, echoing through the mountains like a lullaby meant for the stars. And in the silence that follows, you hear the earth whisper one final word. Grow. You stand among the remnants of something old that now feels somehow new. The golden rain is gone, evaporated, or maybe just folded back into memory, but its warmth lingers on your skin like a soft afterthought. The shrine is still. Not silent exactly, just listening, as if the walls themselves are catching their breath after holding it for centuries. Danae kneels by the basin, her fingers grazing the empty petals like someone brushing the pages of a closed book. She says nothing, but her face carries the serenity of a soul that's finally remembered its own name. Perseus, arms slack at his sides, looks less like a demigod and more like a teenager who's just witnessed his parents' first dance. He murmurs, "That's going to be hard to explain to literally anyone." And you nod because, yeah, even by bedtime story standards, this one's going to raise eyebrows. Outside the cave, dawn is beginning to rise. Not just outside in the physical sense, but inside you. There's a strange lightness now, not because you solved everything, but because, for once, you didn't look away from the weird, golden, myth-soaked truth of things. You let the story tell you who Zeus was, and it wasn't all thunder and ego. There was longing in there, fear, even a touch of regret. You help Danae up and the two of you move toward the exit. She pauses for a moment and turns back to the shrine. "I think he wanted this all along," she says. "To be remembered for the parts of him no one worshipped." The cultists don't follow. They stay in the shrine, their humming now a soft echo that fades behind you as you climb out of the mountain. You realize they were never really a cult in the dangerous sense. They were caretakers, archivists of feeling, people who devoted their lives not to Zeus the god, but Zeus the question. Outside, the air tastes brighter, like citrus and ash and something sweet you can't quite place. You half expect the mountain to crumble behind you in a final dramatic act, but nope, it stays. It simply becomes what it always was, a story nested in stone. Andromeda walks beside you, brushing dust from her sleeves. I feel like we just survived something beautiful and vaguely illegal, she quips. You laugh. Not because it's funny exactly, but because you need to. It shakes something loose. Lets your shoulders drop for the first time since this whole thunderous mess began. By midday, you've descended far enough to see the village again. It looks unchanged. Laundry lines fluttering, goats being their usual chaotic selves. A few kids kicking around a deflated ball like the fate of Olympus doesn't hang by a thread woven from weird golden seeds and interpretive thunderstorms, but you're not unchanged. None of you are. Danae holds the second seed in her hand like it's made of breath. Small and weightless, but heavier than any crown. She doesn't say what she'll do with it. She doesn't have to. Some stories need time to settle before they sprout again. You return to the inn where it all started. Yeah, that rickety place with too much lemon in the tea and the innkeeper who may or may not be a cyclops in disguise. She greets you with a knowing nod and a plate of something vaguely edible. Figured you'd come back changed, she says, as if this sort of thing happens weekly. You don't question it. You just sit and eat and let the taste of figs and honey ground you back into your body. Historians still argue whether the tale of Zeus turning into golden rain to reach Danae was symbolic fertility folklore, political commentary dressed in divine scandal, or just ancient clickbait. Some say the gold was literal wealth, a bribe or a dowry. Others claim it was a meteor shower seen as divine intervention. But standing here now, sipping warm tea with the aftertaste of myth still swirling in your veins, you know better. It wasn't about power. It wasn't even about love. It was about vulnerability. Zeus didn't descend as lightning. He didn't kick down the door in full regalia. He became mist. Rain, the softest thing possible, because maybe the only way a god could be heard was to stop roaring, to whisper instead. And you wonder how many other myths hide that softness beneath their marble shells. How many gods just wanted someone to see them when they weren't glowing, when they were just lost, flawed, and hoping the rain would hide their tears. Back in your room, as dusk curls in through the window, Danae places the seed in a small clay bowl near the hearth. No water, no soil, just trust. Just time. She doesn't say whether she'll plant it, protect it, or pass it on. But you know deep down that it's safe now, that it doesn't need to be worshipped, just witnessed. Perseus snores faintly from the corner. Andromeda hums a sea shanty under her breath, fingers tapping the rhythm against the windowsill. And for a long, beautiful minute, the room feels like the end of a film that doesn't need credits. Just silence, and a single golden note that keeps ringing long after the music stops. You lie back on your cot, stare at the ceiling, close your eyes, and as the last of the golden story settles into the corners of your mind, you feel the smallest bloom press against your ribs. Not painful, just present. A reminder that thunder doesn't always crash. Sometimes it sings. You wake slowly, like a page turning without a breeze, as if the story you've been walking through all this time has settled gently into sleep alongside you. But even before your eyes open, you feel it, the golden weight of what's been carried, what's been witnessed. Not heavy exactly, more like the warmth of a name spoken softly just once, yet somehow remembered forever. Danae is already up, wrapped in a shawl that smells like pine smoke and something older. She's humming not a lullaby, but something close. A sound that doesn't demand to be heard, but waits patiently, like dew on a morning leaf. She moves through the room with quiet purpose, her fingers brushing over the seed near the hearth. Still untouched, still unplanted, still listening. Andromeda's sketching something on the inn's notebook paper, a diagram maybe, or a map of feelings only she understands. You lean in and catch snippets. A mountain curled like a sleeping beast, a sun with tears around it, and a single raindrop falling into a crown. No labels, just shapes that remember. Perseus, still half asleep, mumbles something about lightning tofu and throws a blanket over his face. You smile because that's the thing about demigods. No matter how dramatic their destinies, they snore like the rest of us. You step outside. The village is stretching awake, its rooftops yawning in the pale sun. Children dart barefoot across the dusty road, their laughter trailing behind like kites without strings. And there, right at the edge of the square, you spot the same traveling bard who greeted you all those sections ago. He's tuning his lyre, though it's missing a string now, which somehow makes it sound better. You pause to listen. His fingers move like rain over the strings, and you hear it again, that golden cadence that's haunted your journey. It's not Zeus he sings of, not exactly. It's the moment after the god disappears. The silence that follows thunder. The shape a memory takes once it's let go of its ego. His lyrics are soft, half-hummed, but you catch fragments. Gold that falls but never breaks. Love that waits behind the gate. Rain that listens more than gods. Historians still argue whether Zeus turning into a shower of gold was a literal myth, a coded metaphor, or a desperate poetic excuse for an impossible child. Some suggest it represented the invasion of foreign power cloaked in divinity. Others say it was just a creative way of explaining how Danae got pregnant while locked in a windowless tower. Because, yeah, even in ancient Greece, people had questions, but none of those explanations hold a candle to what you felt in that mountain. The pulse of a god humbled not by defeat but by desire, by the need to be something softer. And this is where the story stops being myth and starts being mirror. Because maybe you felt it too, that ache to be understood without thunder. To shed your lightning just for a second and see if someone still listens. You think of Zeus, not in his grandest form, but in that flickering, falling moment, when he chose not to conquer but to be seen, even if it meant becoming mist, even if it meant fading. Back inside the inn, Dana is sipping something herbal and her eyes meet yours. No words needed, just that glance between two people who have walked the same myth and come out the other side. You sit beside her. She offers you a sip. It tastes like time and smoke and something almost metallic, just the faintest memory of gold. You ask her, what happens now? Oh, she doesn't answer. She doesn't have to. Because the story isn't over, it just changes clothes, becomes other stories. Other shapes. Other rains. Outside, clouds gather lazily on the horizon, not threatening, just drifting, like they're waiting for someone to ask the right question. And that's when it hits you. The story was never about the god, the shrine, the seed, or even Danae. It was about you, listening, following, changing, and choosing not to turn away when things got strange and a little golden. You pack your bag. Not much goes in. Just that half-sketch from Andromeda, a crust of myth bread you're definitely not eating, and the lingering warmth of an impossible night. As you step into the sunlight, you hear a goat sneeze and fall over dramatically. You take that as a sign of approval from the universe. And honestly, at this point, why not? You head down the path away from the village, and with each step the world feels a little more like itself again. But also a little better. Not because everything makes sense now. It doesn't, and it probably shouldn't. But because you carried the myth to its softest place and held it gently in your hands. And somewhere, in some corner of Olympus or memory or maybe just inside your own chest, Zeus exhales. Not in thunder, but in peace, because someone saw him and let him fall. Now just breathe for a moment. Let all the golden echoes swirl gently to the edges of your mind. You don't have to hold them anymore. Just let them drift, like rain sliding down a quiet window. The story's done walking now. Its footprints are behind you, soft and shimmering, fading into the stillness of night. You've seen gods humbled, secrets unearthed, and legends breathe in the dark. You've felt the weight of myth not as something told to you, but something whispered through you. And that changes a person. Even just a little. even if you don't notice until weeks later, standing in the rain, wondering why it feels like a hug. So wherever you are, stretched out under a blanket, curled against a pillow, or floating in that lovely liminal space just before sleep, I want you to know something. You made it, not just through the story, but through the feeling of it. You wandered through wonder, sat down beside strangeness, and walked away softer. And that, honestly, is its own kind of heroism. Let the quiet wrap itself around you now like a familiar old sweater. Let your breath slow. Let your limbs sink. There's nothing left to chase tonight. No lightning to dodge. No towers to unlock. Only the soft hum of a world that's finally, mercifully still. If you listen closely, you might hear it, that last shimmer of gold melting into the folds of your thoughts. It doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't want worship or explanation. Just rest, just presence, just this moment. Maybe tomorrow you'll wake and forget the details. The shrine, the song, the seed. But something inside you will still remember the feeling that even the loudest gods sometimes whisper, that even myths crave softness, and that sometimes the rain isn't falling on you, it's falling with you. So drift now, no more need to understand. Just let go. Let the world blur at the edges. Let yourself become mist for just a little while. And if in your dreams a drop of gold kisses your shoulder, smile. You've earned it. Sleep well, golden wanderer.